Folks, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I would, before I call the meeting to order, I would just ask you if you are not speaking or presenting, I would appreciate if you would mute your phone, and also you can turn your camera off if you like as well. And I'm not referring to the counselors. The counselors, you can leave yours on. And when it's time to speak, and by all means, turn your please remember to turn your microphone back on to unmute yourself, and by all means, put your camera back on if you wish. I believe that we have all 5 of our counselors are present. In addition, we have our CAO clerk, Michelle Hendry, our treasurer, Patricia Allen, our deputy clerk, Judy Mayentz, and we have our planner, John Jackson, and our bylaw enforcement officer, Paul Rossiter. So that's it by way of staff, and welcome to those of you and who I take it have interest on some items on the agenda, and thank you for joining us. I'll call the meeting to order. It is 6:34 p.m. and I will ask the councilors if anyone has a pecuniary interest or conflict of interest to disclose. Hearing none. Let the minutes so show. Undeclared. So now, if we could, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda with an amendment. And the amendment is to add a closed session at the end of the meeting. It's agenda item number 15 for the purpose of a matter to which the meeting is entitled to be closed pursuant to section 239(2)(I) of the Municipal Act. A trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which if disclosed could reasonably expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contract or other negotiations of a person, group, or persons or organization. So and that was a last minute addition to our agenda. So could I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews, seconded by?
I'll second Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Any discussion? Is anyone opposed to this being the agenda?
Am I on?
You are.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to, I'll be approving this since it's in closed, but 2 months ago, I tried to add something to an agenda and I got told that this is the exact reason that people don't have confidence is because we add stuff at the end. But I guess those times and tonight are different, I guess. So anyway, I've made my point. I will be agreeing to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamb. Now, the next thing we'd like to do is to move into the committee of the whole so that we can have a discussion without a motion on the table dealing with 2 items. The first one being the financial statements presentation that we're going to have in a second, and secondly, the one planning item that's on the agenda. So Could I get a motion to move into committee of the whole, please?
I'll make the motion, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by,
I'll second Council McEwen.
thank you, Councillor McEwen. That the council of the municipality of Whitestone move into committee of the whole at 6:38 PM. For presentations and delegations and planning items. Any objection to this motion? Hearing none, I'll declare it carried. Thank you. So the first item that we have is a presentation concerning our draft 2020 consolidated financial statements and the audit that was done by our auditors. And so I'm pleased to introduce Carl Papel. And Carl, the floor is yours if you would like to lead us through the report, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you very much. Your Worship, I just wanted to confirm that the audio is working.
It is.
Very good. Thank you.
I can hear you.
Okay, very good. I am assuming that councillors have a copy of the annual financial statement package.
And so do the members of the public. Yes.
Very good. And so to that extent, I'd ask you to turn to page 1 of the package, which is our independent auditors report. This auditor's report is in standard format. It's an unqualified auditor's report. In other words, as we conducted our audit and completed our audit, we had no issues that were not resolvable, no financial reporting matters that require separate reporting. We conduct our audit in accordance with Canadian Generally Accepted Auditing Standards as prescribed by our professional auditing body. At the end of the day, it is the responsibility of management and those charged with governance for the completion of financial statements, and our role is to be independent external auditors. As is consistent with other smaller municipalities, we of course provide support as required in helping finalize the disclosures and presentations in the financial statements. Having said all that, I'd like to report that our opinion is that these financial statements present fairly the consolidated financial position of the municipality of Whitestone. The financial statements are consolidated because it includes not only the accounts of the municipality proper, but also of the Memorial Public Library and of the trust fund statements. So today, our auditor's report will be dated today, assuming the financial statements are approved, and that will be on the 3rd page. So there's no date on that just yet, but it'll be dated today's date. With that, I would ask you to turn to page 3, the consolidated statement of financial position.
By the way, the page numbers that Carl is referring to are in the material that he sent us, but if you have a printed package with red, or a package on your screen with red page numbers below, you will see they're different. We're actually on red page number 14 of 130. If that helps. Go ahead.
All right. So the consolidated statement of financial position, again, as is required in terms of standards of financial presentation, the financial position is prepared on a comparative basis. In other words, we show the financial position of the municipality of Whitestone both at December 31st, 2020, which is your fiscal year end, and with comparative numbers as of the prior fiscal year end, December 31st, 2019. Some summary highlights from the statement of financial position. As you can see, cash and cash equivalents increased during the course of the year from $979,000 in the prior year to $1,184,712 in the current year. Accounts receivable increased slightly from 668,000 to 759,000. Part of that is an increase in, I'm sorry, part of that actually is an increase in taxes receivable. That's just a small amount. The large amount is there was quite a bit of new investment in capital programs, capital additions in the current year, and we'll provide some additional detail in respect to that momentarily. But as a result of that, you receive a portion of your HST that is embedded in those purchases. And at the end of the year, there was 226,000 of HST receivable from the government, which is included in these accounts receivable. So that caused the increase essentially in the accounts receivable balance in the current year. In the liabilities side, temporary borrowings, if we turn to note 5 of the package. I'm not sure what page that is on. I know what page it is in my package. I apologize, but it's note 5 to the financial statements. Details on the temporary borrowings. As you can see, there was a infrastructure Ontario debenture repayable in monthly interest only payments calculated 0.643% and was unsecured. And that was in the amount of $249,504 as at the December 31st, 2020. Accounts payable and accrued liabilities. I'm back on the statement of financial position. Increased from 258,000 in the prior year to 690,490 in the current year. Two significant items of note in terms of the increase. There was an amount, typically the amounts for school boards so that you collect are remitted prior to the end of the year, but they were remitted shortly after the end of the year. And so at December 31st, the municipality owed 238,000 in amounts it had collected in respect of school board amounts. Also, because of, again, the significant capital addition activities during the year, at that time, at December 31st, there was 96,000 owing in respect of the library renovation. So the impact of those two was an increase of $350,000 in short-term obligations at the end of the year. Deferred revenue, I'll ask you to turn to note 6 with provide detail on that.
Mr. Papella, what page number is yours on that? Because we have your page numbers at the top also for the notes. You know,
If you
notes are on page.
It's page 10 in my, it's page 10 of the financial statements, that I can tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, it's Pat. It's actually page 24 of 130 in our package.
Thank you.
Pat.
So note 6, deferred revenue. As you can see, the components of deferred revenue at the end of the year, if you look in the very far right hand, the very last column, there was $140,000 in cash that had been collected in lieu of Parkland. The gas tax that was collected during the year was spent and taken into revenue. And then there was other amounts of deferred revenue of $30,048. Again, these amounts are taken into revenue when they are spent in accordance with the terms of how the funds were received. So at the end of the year, $170,064 in deferred revenue, as opposed to $218,424 at the beginning of the year. I'll just ask you to turn right to the next page, and this has the municipal debt note, and then we'll turn back to the statement of financial position after I talk about this particular note. So this is the detail. So this is note 7, page 11 of my package. You can see details are provided here in respect of the long-term borrowings of the municipality as at December 31st, 2020. Of note, in the middle of the page, it shows the amount of future obligations, so the annual obligations for each of the next 5 years. So as you can see, 148,000 of principal owing in 2021, 151,000 the following year, and the interest components. During the course of the year, you made $241,392 in principal payments and interest payments of $30,493. So if we just turn back to page 3 of the package, the statement of financial position again. In summary, at December 31st, we had $1,139,895 of long-term debt, of municipal debt, versus $1,089,834 in the prior year. The next item is the landfill closure, post-closure obligation. Again, there's a requirement to essentially set up funding, if you will, or an obligation for the costs related to closure, landfill closure, eventual landfill closure. So again, details of this are provided in note 9 to the financial statements. So the two facilities in which there is a long-term obligation, the Dunchurch facility and the Alds Road landfill facilities. Again, these are evaluated on a triannual basis. There's new studies that are done to evaluate the assumptions. The assumptions deal with expenditures that would be incurred at the time that these sites are closed and post-closure costs, and an assessment of the amount of remaining useful capacity of each site. So those calculations are done, that study is done every 3 years, and then this accrual is updated according to that study at such time. Okay, the next item on the statement of financial position is the tangible capital assets. And I have with me today Andrew Poppel, and he's going to provide some comments on the tangible capital assets.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, we did it on one device to make it a little simpler. If you turn to page 19 of the package, Schedule 1. I don't know if, Pat, you're able to translate that into the correct page number for the public and council. It is entitled Consolidated Schedule of Tangible Capital Assets.
Yes, it's actually page 33 of 130.
Thanks, Pat, as always. Okay, so we actually had a fairly busy year in Whitestone with respect to asset additions. When we look at a high level, we always try to look at asset additions as compared to your amortization. Your amortization for the year was approximately $709,000 on a consolidated basis, and our asset acquisitions were approximately $1.6 million. So what that says is we had a net improvement in our assets in the year, as opposed to if we had spent less than amortization. So amortization being obviously the rate of which we are writing our assets off. Now, obviously, these are management estimates, and they are compared with other municipalities, as I believe we discussed earlier with respect to accounting policies. But in any event, it is sort of the best management estimate with respect to the speed in which assets are being written off. And so this year, we obviously have a significant investment over deterioration. If we compare that to last year, we sort of spent in line with amortization at about $700,000, which, especially when it comes to assets, we like to look at more than 1 year, because assets are so long lived that if we only look at additions and amortization 1 year, it could be sort of a faulty picture. However, we look over the last 2-year time horizon, and it represents a good investment in capital assets, which is a healthy position when it comes to delivering services to ratepayers. couple of highlights with respect to what those additions were. We had a bunch of work that was done on three main roads: Canning, Balsam, and Whitestone Lake Road. That's usual, in conjunction with the roads need study and other capital planning. That's sort of usual maintenance and improvement that goes on. There was a snowplow that was purchased for $294,000. And then we had a significant addition to the library building of $665,000. Those were our sort of main highlights with respect to the spending that or at least the investment in assets that went on throughout the year.
Thank you, Andrew. In summary, then, the statement of financial position, when we add the financial assets, deduct the liabilities, and add the non-financial assets, we have a overall municipal, what's labeled a municipal accumulated surplus of $9,300,000 and $190 this year, as compared to $8,857,888 in the prior year. And again, obviously, that is not a surplus meaning cash. That is a surplus meaning an investment in capital assets, cash on hand, and deduction of liability. So that's the net accumulated surplus position at December 31st, 2020. The next page in the package is the statement of consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. I ask you to turn to that page 4 in our package. The statement, again, on a comparative basis, with both fiscal years being presented, breaks out, it highlights, if you will, the larger categories of revenue collected by the municipality and by expenditures. There's, of course, an awful lot of detailed work that goes into the preparation annually of the budget, ongoing analysis of year-to-date numbers, and those presentations, of course, are done in conjunction with your staff and council. And so this is a high-level summary again of the amounts for the year. So in 2020, as you can see, property taxes collected increased from $2,780,000 in 2019 to $2,950,000 in 2020. Government transfers, next major item, government transfers. $1,751,000 last year, $1,695,000 this year. There was included this year some one-time COVID funding in the amount of $232,000. In addition, there was also a FedNor government funding in respect to the library of approximately $150,000 included in those government transfer amounts. Other amounts, as you can see, that category dropped. Included in the other amounts are items such as recreational programs revenue. Obviously, as a result of the pandemic difficulties in 2020, many of those programs simply did not run, or if they ran, but it was on an extremely limited basis, and so revenue was down in those programs. Also, in the prior year, in 2019, there was significant revenue in respect of fire revenue of $80,000, which did not occur to that magnitude in 2020. As you can see, all of the various expense categories. Again, I'm not going to go through the details of those, as those are analyzed in detail on an ongoing month-to-month basis, as presented by staff to council and discussed at council meetings. But again, the captions are all there. At the end of the day, or the end of the year, I guess more appropriately, the annual surplus, when we take revenue and deduct expenditures, was $442,302 versus $639,221 in the prior year. Again, this is on accounting method basis. In other words, your municipal budget your municipal budget treats capital expenditures as an expense in the year that they're spent, whereas financial statements recognize the long life of capital assets, and so they are not an expense in the year, but they are written off over time, as Andrew discussed the amortization. So the method of calculating the surplus is different on a full accrual basis, of course, than on a typical annual municipal budgeting basis. The next page that I'm going to refer to is page 7, 8, and 9 of our package. And these are your accounting policies. So again, these are the accounting policies that the financial statements are prepared upon. We analyze these policies, review these policies for compliance with that they're appropriate for your particular municipality, that they're comparable to other municipalities of similar size to Whitestone. And as Andrew referred to, these policies show the various amortization rates. If you can see on page 8, basis of accounting, tangible capital assets, there's the various amortization rates, land improvements, 20 years, buildings, 40 years, and so on down the list. Again, we look at these for comparability to other municipalities, but we look at these for relevance to the fact situation of your particular municipality. In the current year, there were no changes to accounting policies. And as I said, these financial statements are prepared on a consistent basis using the same accounting policies, both in 2020 and 2019. Note 2 to the financial statements on page 9 of the package provides additional information in respect of contributions to your unconsolidated joint boards. As you can see, contributions to District of Parry Sound Social Services, $262,000 compared to $260,000 in the prior year. North Bay Parry Sound District Health Unit, $29,490 compared to $30,545 in the prior year. And District of Parry Sound Home for the Aged, $92,220 in the current year versus $91,217 in the prior year. On the next page, note number 3, operations of school boards. Again, I commented previously that you collect, of course, amounts on behalf of school boards, and in the current year, there was $238,000 that had not been remitted as at the end of the year, but was remitted after that. So that amount showed up in your accounts payable on your statement of financial position that we already spoke to. The trust funds, note number 4, $56,000 was held in trust at the end of the year versus $54,201 in the prior year. There is a separate financial statement for the trust funds with a required audit report on that. And I can report that again, there was no issues, and we've issued our audit report. I say on a no issue basis, a clean audit report on the trust funds. We've already discussed note number 5 and note number 6 and note number 7. And note number 8 provides details in respect of additional credit facilities that the municipality has available. You have an overdraft facility available of $1 million with TD Canada Trust. That was also the same at the end of December 31st, 2019. And no amount was borrowed on that facility at the end of either of those 2 years. You also have a smaller facility with the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce up to $100,000. And again, no amounts were used in respect to that in either year. Note number 10, note number 11 simply provides details again in respect to contractual obligations, capital assets, which we've already reviewed. Note number 14, pension agreements. The amount contributed, the municipality makes contributions to the OMERS retirement fund. And as you can see in the last sentence in that note, the amount during the year that was contributed to OMERS in respect of current services for staff was $77,000 in 2020 versus $57,915 in the prior year. Note number 16, subsequent events. We talked about the temporary infrastructure borrowing. Those amounts were replaced with the long-term debenture subsequent to the year end. Again, the information on each of sort of the new financings that were arranged subsequent to December 31st, 2020. The last three sentences are essentially disclosures this year that are standard disclosures in essentially every municipality in Ontario. And that is simply an indication of the uncertainty that everyone has lived through in terms of the operations of the municipality as a result of pandemic effects. And so these disclosures are typical and standard, and we're essentially required to include these disclosures in your financial statements. And that is really the extent of my comments on the financial statements. We'd like to thank staff again. This is the second year that we've completed our audit on a virtual basis. It certainly has been an interesting process, adapting, using technology, and it's obviously it's a little more time consuming for your staff having to scan documents and submit documents to us and that sort of thing. But it's a process that we've all had to painfully accept and go through. And I very much thank the team for their support. My people were able to complete the audit and obtain the documentation required. And yeah, so we've all adapted as required from a financial administrative management perspective. So I thank your team for that. And with that, that concludes my comments. If there are any questions that we could answer, we'd be pleased to try, or we may redirect if necessary.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl and Andrew. Go, councilors, questions.
Yeah. Councillor Lamb, thanks, Carl. I've met you many times over the years through all these financial reviews, and thanks for your work on our behalf. Our tax rate in Whitestone is relatively low. I think third lowest out of 15 or 20 other similar size municipalities in our area. And I think that's a good thing. I guess overall, how would you stack up our financial position overall vis-a-vis other communities that you audit? You don't need to name them, but I mean, what kind of financial health are we in vis-a-vis other communities?
Well, it really varies, and thank you for the question. Now, from our perspective, Andrew commented on sort of, I mean, capital assets that were acquired 30 years ago, to try to replace those today, some of them are so prohibitively more expensive than they were then. So it doesn't take a lot to use up a lot of capital when there are those sorts of issues in terms of capital replacement that arise over time. Having said that, you're well within your debt amounts are well below the prescribed limits, and there are many municipalities that struggle with that and are push the top of the limits or exceed limits and that sort of thing. So your overall position, given your tax base, given the assets that you service and that provide services to the ratepayers, overall, you have a very healthy balance sheet, frankly, compared to some that we see. Say you have reserves, you have cash balances that are very similar to your reserve amounts, so those are very real. So it's for a small municipality, I call it a healthy overall financial position. Obviously, subject to the types of things that we can't control, weather, Mother Nature. There's a lot of things that we can't have it, we don't have a crystal ball to predict how things will go, but on balance, I certainly feel it's a well financially managed and a healthy small municipality.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Other
Councilor
questions?
McEwen?
Go ahead, Councilor McEwen.
Councilor McEwen? Yes, Carl, thank you for your information this evening. It's very, very well laid out. I appreciate it. My thoughts are along kind of the same lines as Councilor Lamb. And I guess when you mentioned the credit facility agreement that we have with the two banks, and we've used nil of the necessary monies. So I guess we are on the side of caution. I'm wondering if that lacks a little progressiveness. I'm just wondering if other municipalities run in the same on the same ledger line, those lines with the same sort of caution. Like I see a lot of hard tops and paved roads and things in our communities to the south and things like that. I guess being cautious is not a bad thing. Do you have any comment toward our spendings in those regards?
Well, what you're referring to, of course, is sort of the long-term capital asset replacement plan and the types of capital required for that plan. And that's something that is part of your long-term planning that you do. And, you know, it's kind of, you can never have too much money, obviously, because, you know, you can upgrade the caliber, the quality of the service that's being provided, the type of road surface, you know, there's just numerous needs, but on balance, I think, I feel, based upon my experience with so many other municipalities, I think Whitestone walks a very reasonable, conservative line, such that, you know, if that rainy day happens, you have the ability to deal with that issue that may come up, and so you have reserves, you know, so it's not, you haven't mortgaged the future such that, you know, you're looking at, you know, just, you know, difficult increases in tax rates. You know, your tax rate adjustments are generally speaking very reasonable in comparison to other municipalities. So it's you know, on balance, again, I think it's prudent financial management. I think that's really been the history of Whitestone for the past number of years, and that's why you have a solid financial position that you do.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the work of you and the team, and that would include our treasurer, Pat, I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? Councilor
I have
Gordon
a question,
Matthews,
Mr. Mayor.
go ahead.
Sure. So thank you for being here tonight and explaining this very well to some of us who aren't used to seeing numbers like this. So my question has to do with our tax rate increase. This year we had a 1% tax rate increase. I'm just wondering, is there a certain level that is a healthy increase that you should expect each year? Or, you know, you see some municipalities have a 5%, 8% increase. Is there a certain healthy level that you should increase it each year to, you know, offset new costs, etc.?
Well, again, it's not a simple answer, because the planning process for the long-term capital needs for the municipality it's quite complex. I mean, you have, you know, we went over some of the details in respect of your capital assets. I mean, you have $9.9 million worth of capital assets on your books. So the replacement of those capital assets is obviously the replacement, the renovation, the rejuvenation of those capital assets. That's the big, you know, that's the big spend, obviously. And, you know, in municipalities where, you know, where they've neglected perhaps sort of capital maintenance in an adequate way over several years, that's where you tend to see the larger tax rate increases, where you keep up with the expenditures. And Andrew pointed out that in the current year, and if we took the last 2 years, you've spent more than what we've depreciated during that time. So again, to us, that's an indicator that you're keeping up with the requirement to rejuvenate and revitalize your capital assets. So it's when we see that the investment in capital asset replacement is significantly less than the ongoing amortization, depreciation of those capital assets, you know there's going to be a problem down the road. And we don't have that in Whitestone at all. And that's why I say that I feel you take a fair midpoint conservative approach. But again, as to what's the right amount of tax increase in any particular given year, that ties to the long-term financial planning of the municipality. But from my perspective, as your external auditor, I think you've done a very fair and reasonable job of managing that today.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Carl, yeah, thank you. I think we are in pretty good shape. Where we're taxed a bit is that if you look at our roads needs study, our gravel roads, 26% of them are classified in poor position. And in order to bring those up, I think the roads needs study talks about something like $12 million. Well, I'm not sure where we'd get $12 million, but I think that's where we need, or one area at least, that we need to invest money in the coming years. And I think we're in healthy enough financial shape that we can afford to do that in terms of our equipment and trucks and plows and graders and things like that. I think we've got a very good schedule of replacement, and I think we're in pretty good shape for our municipality. So I think the future bodes well financially for us, as long as we're prepared to spend in those areas that I think and others think need spending. Thank you.
Okay, there's other questions. Councillor Woods, do you have any questions?
Is he still with us?
He's still with us. He's muted. Well, I'm going to take it not, but does anyone else have any anything they'd like to add before we move on? Anyway, hearing nothing, I will. I want to again thank Carl and Andrew for coming and for walking us through all of this, and thanks for your clean report and positive report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just got a message from Councillor Woods, and it says they must have me muted. I tried to say a few things earlier, and I'm getting nothing.
Can I ask our host? Can you unmute Councillor Woods? Oh, he's unmuted. Sorry, Councillor Woods. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I didn't have any questions. I was trying to talk a little bit earlier, and I was wondering what was happening there. I don't have any questions. I'd just like to thank Carl and Andrew for this package here. You know, it's laid out pretty well. And yeah, that's all. I'd just like to thank them for their time and all the hard work that they put in and staff has put into this report.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and once again, thanks. Thank you, Carl and Andrew. We'll move on to, if there's nothing further, we will move on then to our next item, which is item 5. It's a planning item that you folks have seen before, relating to a request to close and purchase a shore road allowance, which is just above Bob Crescent in Dunchurch. You have a report there, and I guess what I noticed that our planner, John Jackson, is with us, and perhaps, John, if you would like to just give an update
Thank
What's
you.
transpired since the last, since the last meeting when we talked about this?
Well, one of the things that if I may, through your worship, council was concerned about disadvantaging, prejudicing, I suppose, restricting access to any adjoining lands that may be affected. So they had asked us to circulate to those possibly affected landowners, and there were two. There was the landowner who accessed the property off of Moore Drive, who indicated that they were somewhat opposed to the sale of this road allowance to the Andersons unless they were offered at least half of the width of the road allowance for their ownership. And I think that probably was correspondence that may have been circulated. Council may recall that there were changes to legislation about 20 years ago, whereby that requirement was no longer legislated, that you could offer the land to sale for anyone. The basis for that was that it would generate the highest price, but be that as it may, so the neighbors, Curry's, I think their name is, wanted to acquire half the road allowance. And my thought was that the lands need to be evaluated in any sort of determination of disposing of them. So perhaps we would go through that step now to put a price on them, because well, the neighbors may say we want our half. If the half were to be $15,000 or $20,000 for a $30,000 or a $40,000 parcel, they might go, oh, thank you, but no thank you. So for the sake of a few $100 appraisal of the property, I thought that was good information to seek out. Now, I believe doing the math on the half the property for the Andersons' interest, they would get what I would call the transition necessary to turn a non-viable property into a viable property, even with just half. So if the neighbors wanted half and council felt that it was something that they should fairly offer, I think the transaction still is a good one for the Andersons, but we don't know at what expense, say, that the Currys would be willing to acquire their half. It certainly isn't going to be nominal, because it'll have been appraised at a value by a qualified appraiser to determine what that cost will be.
Okay, so then your recommendation is that the next step be an appraisal, is that?
Correct.
I got that right? Okay, thank you. Now, we did receive, which is in the package, a letter of concern or opposition, I guess, from the Currys regarding that. And I believe that's in the package. We also just very recently received a letter from Tim Anderson and Laura, talking about why they were interested in that particular parcel in the first place. And I noticed that they are on the call this evening, or one or both of them are on the call. I wonder if this would be an appropriate time for them to have, if you wish to speak to this, would you like to unmute yourself and go ahead, please?
Hey, hello there. Hello, Your Worship and councillors and everybody present. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead. Not sure what happened there. I think we lost them. Oh, no. Tim and Laura, are you there? You're not muted. Okay, well, I guess what we could do at this point is open it up to if they get back on, we'll give them a chance. But I'll open it up to counselors if you have any questions about the matter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor McEwen.
Mm-hmm.
I took the liberty to walk that property the best I could last week, and it's very, very difficult to identify with the actual property, which is road allowance versus the property on the back and such. It's very, very rugged. I'm not sure if Mr. Jackson has seen the property firsthand, but it's a very difficult one to traverse, either up and down or from end to end. It's many levels and a whole lot of rock in there. So I called our CBO to see if there'd been any sketches or any information presented to show where and how they would put, say, buildings on the property with proper setbacks from road fronts and side lots, back lot lines and such. And there had been nothing presented to him. I guess the only involvement our office probably has had was that has been to do with the planning part of it, the process part of applying for the purchase of the road allowance. I'm just wondering if they were to acquire half that width of 66 feet, 33 feet, Mr. Jackson, you feel it could be made into a viable building site with that additional 33 feet if it went that route?
Through your worship, I think that observation is a good one. I agree with you. It's got a lot of hummocky land and it's very, very heavily constrained. So it would be better in terms of a viable lot to have the full 66 feet. But I think it with some creativity, it might be possible. That's why I think if we have the appraisal, which we have to get anyway, the neighbors may say, Ikes, we don't want to pay, north of $10,000 for half of it. But in my sort of understanding, the Andersons are prepared to pay whatever value it is, obviously, to make a non-viable lot viable. And I think the information that I got was they were looking at a 30 by 40 dwelling. That's the first I've seen it. That was in their letter just late this past few days.
Well, they certainly do build places on bluffs and rough terrain once it's all cleared out and set up for buildings. So that'd be their deal. Thank you.
Okay, I see that Tim and Laura have managed to get back on. You're still muted, folks. If you want to unmute and go ahead, and we'll hear what you have to say.
Okay, yeah, so sorry about that. The timing is just, of course, as soon as we go to speak, it cuts out. Anyway, yeah, so I suppose we just wanted to take an opportunity quickly. Unfortunately, we haven't met the neighbors yet in person because of everything that's so strange with COVID. We would have normally introduced ourselves and let them know about our plans, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. So we bought a different property in Whitestone in 2018, and we've absolutely fell in love with the area. And just this past fall, we saw the for sale sign on this lot on Bob's Crescent, and we were kind of inspired and hummed and hawed and thought, you know what, maybe we could make a go of this. And then after we did some research and looked into the municipality's guidelines, we realized it might be a little bit difficult because the very front of the property is quite a sheer rock. And so with the setbacks in mind, we consulted a little bit with township staff, and I'll let Tim kind of explain how that process went.
Yeah, hello there. Yeah, so with Paula Macri and Tyler Irwin, we sort of, determined that we need like 55 feet of setbacks between the front yard and the backyard. And just the way the property's shaped, like some of it is going to be like, you'll have a pocket, but it'll be this pocket, like you can't put it here or there. So I think really opening up that road allowance for us gives an option for the best kind of perspective, or what makes sense with the driveway, or what makes sense with sun or the wind, or all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. And also I just want to add too, with regards to the neighbors' concerns, I get it, like to have a property that you're absolutely in love with, you want to defend that, but I perhaps they're imagining defending it against a big developer or somebody who's going to come in and like they said, clear cut, and that's not what we're going to do. We just want to build a property that we can stay on year round and to live in the community. And if we are able to purchase the road allowance, and that should give us enough space to keep the tree line on the highway and to keep a tree line buffer between the properties as well, and to give us enough space to build a dwelling in the middle of it. So as far as any concerns of clear cutting, that's not who we are, and that's certainly not what we would do. So to Colleen and Marvin, that's to ease your mind in that regard. And also even beyond that, from the municipality's perspective, I don't believe it's common in Whitestone or any place I've ever lived for there to be a buffer of a road allowance between properties, and neighbors make it work with privacy and respectful boundaries. So I don't think it's in the municipality's best interest to have a piece of land that could be sold and the revenue could be used for municipal purposes, and also to increase the value of the property and the taxes that would be collected because of that. Yeah, and then maybe there was one thing you were going to add about splitting the road allowance, or what makes sense size-wise.
Yeah, I guess, because yeah, there's an option, I suppose, of splitting the road allowance, and whether or not Colleen and Marvin, want to buy that half or not remains to be seen. But I think if it was all, I mean, they have already like a 2-acre parcel that's, reasonable shape, and it sort of all makes sense. And I guess if the whole road allowance was added onto ours, it would sort of start to approximate like, a rectangle, and it would bring it up to 1 acre. It seems like a nice round number. I don't know, that's somehow satisfying. And yeah, I think that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for your explanation. I will once again ask if there are other questions that councillors have at this point. What when we come back out of just to give you a heads up, when we come back out of into regular session after we've done with this item, there is a suggested motion, which is to do what Mr. Jackson has suggested, namely to get an appraisal and take it from there. So we're not looking at making a decision tonight one way or the other on the closure and sale itself. Go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Conley.
Yes, who's this? please?
It's Scott Nash. Could I ask a simple question if I'm allowed to?
Sure, go ahead.
My simple question was just in regards to road allowance. Does the municipality require the purchasers, I think if they want to buy, they should be able to. But however, has an environmental assessment been completed on it or a species of risk assessment been completed to make sure that all those things are appropriate for the sale of it? Would you know that answer, or is it a policy that the city has that they're required?
Well, as far as the environmental assessment, I will refer that to Mr. Jackson. The risk assessment is kind of what we're doing in these discussions. The primary risk associated with closing a road allowance like this one is the risk that it will prejudice someone else accessing their property or accessing another piece of property in the future, and has been considered already in Mr. Jackson's report. But John, do you want to comment on an environmental assessment? I don't believe there's a requirement for one.
No, the correct answer is there could be, if there was believed to be habitat features that lent themselves to species at risk. And most of those are associated with more wetland type conditions where certain reptiles on the list of threatened or endangered species rely upon for their habitat. But an area between, I'm going to call it a highway and a built-up community, tends to not trigger what would be obvious kinds of habitat adverse impact signs. So nothing hit me. I did attend at the site, and it's not something we would leave out, but it's usually something that jumps out at you, and it certainly didn't in this case, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you both.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mayor, you were referring to for me to go ahead.
I was originally, but
Okay. I just kindly ask that when you say that you say, go ahead, Councillor Lamb. Lots of times I hear you say, just go ahead. And I don't know who. Anyway, I think you're asking me to go ahead.
I am sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. One of the problems I have with doing things in principle, which is what we did a month or two ago on this file, is because it comes out on a Friday night to us, and we're supposed to have, without walking the property, without doing things, we're sort of saying, well, do we have any problems with this? Well, I guess not on the surface. And so we agree to it in principle, then a formal application goes in, and then costs are being allocated back to the Andersons because of that. And we're moving along on it. And then we get a second crack at it, like tonight, and I looked at it in an entirely different light today than I had the first time that I looked at this thing. And I look back at the file where it says, when it comes to the principle for the closure and sale of things, that council needs to consider whether there could possibly be a future need to preserve ownership of the road allowance. The need could be for any number of reasons and not simply access. So I started thinking about the public good, because these road allowances are obviously owned by the public. And when I think of our community and I think of Dunchurch, I think over the years that I've been on council, there's 2 or 3 things that have constantly come up. One of them is the Grange, which is old and dilapidated, and we tried for years to put money into it to keep it up and not crumbling apart. And Councillor Beth Gorham Matthews put some wonderful pictures on the Grange, which I think look wonderful. But we all know that the Grange is on its last legs at some point, whether we like it or not. And the second thing that there's two other things that we're looking for in the community is always parking, which is at a premium. And the other that we need desperately is storage. Now, if you look strategically at the land that the Andersons have, they have a piece of land that they can't develop. But if you look at all the land around them, we own it. We as a municipality own the Grange. We own the area called Bob's Crescent in front of it, where the road comes out now. Then you have the Andersons property, and then you have the road allowance. Just think for a moment, if we as a municipality owned all that land, and just think of the possibilities with respect to that in terms of setbacks. Right now, if we wanted to put a building up where the Grange is, we can't do it. And therefore, I'm not sure that selling this road allowance to anyone is in the public interest right now. I really, really think we're being short-sighted in terms of the possibilities long-term for Dunchurch and for Whitestone with respect to this. We have too many needs in terms of these things to just turn a blind eye and say, there's the road allowances. I'm sure it would be good for the Andersons to have that. And I applaud them for trying to put it together, but they bought a piece of land that basically is undevelopable. I didn't buy it, you didn't buy it, they bought it. And they're trying to piece something together, but it shouldn't be at the expense of what we should be doing, in my opinion, as a municipality. So unless I've got this thing wrong, and maybe I do, lots of times I'm wrong, I really think this is short-sighted of us to just get an appraisal and split that land up and say, there we go, it's gone. Because after that, we're then done. And when the Grange comes down, eventually it will, and we can hardly build on it, or we can just build a little thing. We can't put heat in it. We can't make a storage area. Then someone's going to say, weren't we crazy? So those are my thoughts on it. And I really, really would like to be convinced that they're crazy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to comment at this point?
Well, can someone answer my questions?
Mr. Mayor, could I ask
Well-
Mr. Jackson a question on this?
Does it relate to Councillor Lamb's question? Maybe if
I'd like,
I don't know if Mr.
I'd like
Jackson,
my questions answered. I appreciate it, Joe. You can ask whatever you want, but I just made I think an impassioned plea to do the right thing here. And I'd like someone, John Jackson, or I want more than a thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
okay, go ahead, John, if you have a response.
I certainly respect Joe's perspective on it. I'd like to see how those working parts of properties would actually end up in terms of benefiting the community. So I hadn't looked at that close enough. So if you wanted to defer this, I'd be happy to look at that a little bit closer. So before I answer Councillor Lamb, that's what I'd like to do.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just a comment on this.
Go ahead.
Good. Reason I looked at it was for the very reasons Councillor Lamb has mentioned, and the usefulness and the need for road allowances, making best uses of our properties in the village in particular. And I was pretty taken back by the roughness, the terrain, just the possibility that someone would try to take it and make something useful out of it was kind of, I guess, in a sense, refreshing. And I would wish them luck if they could do that. I don't see that as being a valuable property to be retained for parking or accesses to any part of the properties, say around Bob's Crescent in the future, personally. So, end of comment. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, did you know? Sorry.
No, I wasn't gonna, I'm just was
Oh.
taking notes, your worship, because I was going to try and put together the sort of supplementary assessment that I think Councillor Lamb is looking for to clearly answer his question, which he's asked for.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting at, John, is, you know, the rough terrain and hill and rock and things like that can be used as setback too. I'm talking of the whole property. If we had everything, right? We then have enough property in total to put something somewhere, and not just necessarily on the Anderson property, and not, you know, but somewhere on that property, if you think of the whole thing in total, that we could develop it into something, and that's the basis by which, if we can't, if it's impossible to do that, then I guess we should look at selling the road allowance. But if it is possible for us to preserve that land for future use within our community, and it is of some strategic value to us, then I don't think we should be selling the road allowance. But if it isn't, if you come back and say, hey, it's impossible, Lamb, you know, you can't put anything on there, you know, but we can use it as setback. And if Mr. Anderson can put a 30 by 40 foot building, then surely, you know, and Mr. Jackson saying, well, it's now developable, surely it's of some use, or people wouldn't want to buy it. And we do have the land where where the Grange is. We do have the area where Bob's Crescent is, and we do have the road allowance. So I just think it needs to be seriously looked at. And I don't think we've done that due diligence. It needs to be looked at before we make any decision to start, you know, valuing properties and splitting them up. So that's all my request is.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other council? Do I see Councillor Woods?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. I understand exactly where Councillor Lamb's coming from. I looked at this. I mean, when we originally did it, I suggested that one change to run the line parallel to the highway. But I think from what I'm getting from Councillor Lamb, where the Grange is in that patch that we own, it would be on page 43 of our package. We own part 3, and I mean the traveled road allowance for Bob Crescent, we owned that. Or if we owned the Anderson lands, which I think, or I'm assuming at one point we did, and it was sold to them. If we had all of that as well as the road allowance, we have a massive piece of property there that we could eliminate the Grange and build a new building somewhere in there and open up a lot of parking for future development of the township in the core of Dunchurch there. I mean, there's no doubt, there's no denying, nobody could deny the lack of parking that we have in the area around all of our municipal buildings. I mean, when we have the fairgrounds, you see people lined up and down the sides of the highway because we don't have anywhere to park. So I agree with Councillor Lamb there. I think that us selling that whenever it was sold, that was a bit of a mistake. But yeah, we should definitely have Mr. Jackson look into it further, the way that Councillor Lamb is suggesting. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right. Oh,
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Gorham Matthews, go ahead.
Yeah, I walked that as well, and you know, it is awfully rough. I don't see how it would be economical for us to develop that area. I guess I'm just a little taken back that we're actually having a conversation about taking someone's property and developing it with our own property to make parking and storage and things when someone owns this property and isn't interested in selling it to us at this point, other than the fact that we're going to make life difficult for them to ever develop it on their own. I just feel like this conversation's taken a bit of a twist that I wasn't expecting, and I'm sure the Andersons weren't expecting either. It doesn't seem very fair to them. You know, I appreciate that we need to conserve our road allowances and make them the most use out of them, but we have two property owners that are interested in preserving and using them to the best of their abilities, and it just seems a strange twist that this has taken for the Andersons. That's my only comment. I think we should proceed with getting appraisal on it and finding out that it's actually usable for the property owners and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Well, it sounds to me like we have, you know, further work that needs to be done. So I wonder if we can, in the interest of time, if we can move back into our regular session. We do have some other items that may take a bit of time later on, and we're not, as I said before, wasn't the intention that we resolve this matter finally tonight, just that we discuss how to move it forward. So thanks to everybody for your input, and if we can, let's get a motion to reconvene into regular meeting.
Also move.
I'll make the
Councillor
motion,
Fiona.
Mr. Mayor.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yes, who's speaking?
Yes, it's Marvin Curry, the the owner of the other property. This abuts.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you were. I looked for you earlier and didn't see that you were there.
We were both on the call. It was just the video was blocked. So we're still here, Marvin and Colleen Curry.
Okay, well, go ahead, please.
Yes, as owners of this property that we bought 3 years ago, we actually moved here for privacy and to have our own little piece of heaven. And when we moved here, we had no idea that this would be piece of property was even for sale or could be sold. We thought we were pretty safe with the road allowance. We didn't think that you guys were interested in selling the road allowance. With any of the trees being taken out, we would be quite open to the 124. When fall comes and the leaves go off, it's right there on us. So if anybody cuts any trees off this, we feel our privacy will be gone. So there is a waterway through it. When it rainy season, fall, spring, the water does run through there pretty good. That was one of our major concerns also. So I was hoping that somebody would be looking into something like that. Right now it's dry, of course, because we haven't had too much rain. But in the fall, there's quite a bit of water goes through there. So our letter is.
We feel a lot of it was left out. The only last part was about this 33 feet, and we did obtain legal advice, so it's not a number we pulled out of a hat. And we feel in a way that it was very slanted by Mr. Jackson. I apologize, but our absolute is a hard no. We don't want it to go ahead at all. If we need to buy the 33 feet, I guarantee you we will find the money and we will buy it. I'm just really upset that it just seems like from our letter, like the whole thing wasn't brought into context. I do appreciate the counselors that are sort of seeing more, same as us. Our son works for the municipality of Whitestone in now his third season as a student. And we are really trying to be part of this community. But again, we really value our privacy and really need that to be understood. Obviously, we don't want to have to buy the road allowance. We don't want it to go through. If the municipality needs to have more infrastructure, we understand that. But it just, I don't know, I'm just really feeling like we're not being properly understood, maybe. I understand you do need to do more investigation into this and that. So, we'll be very interested to see what this looks like going forward.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and sorry I missed you earlier.
Thank you.
Okay. We do have I did get a mover and seconder, and I believe the mover was Counselor McEwen and the seconder was Counselor Woods. I think they both spoke at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll second.
Yes.
Okay, so Counselor Woods, seconded by Counselor McEwen. I'll do it that way. This is to reconvene to regular council at 7:53 PM. Is anyone opposed to that motion? Hearing none, no, I will declare it carried. So matters arising from committee of the whole. The next item that we have is a motion to accept the draft 2020 consolidated financial statements as presented by our auditors. So could I get a mover and seconder for that, please?
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by,
I'll second, Counselor Woods.
thank you. Any discussion about this one? So that the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby accept the draft 2020 consolidated financial statements as presented on June 21st, 2021 by Papel and Associates, professional chartered accountants. Okay, if there is no further discussion, I'm going to ask our clerk to read the roll for this vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gore Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
and Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. That brings us then to the matter we just discussed, the application to purchase and close the municipal road allowance. This is the motion that I have as a suggested motion, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receive staff memo Anderson purchase of Crown Road allowance between concessions A and B, geographic township of Hagerman, between east limits of lots 58 and 59, concession A, for information purposes. And that the council of the municipality of Whitestone hereby recommends that an appraiser determine the value of the road allowance lands requested to be purchased. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please?
I'll
make
move
that
Counselor
motion.
McEwen.
All right, I heard Councillor McEwen and Councillor Gorham Matthews. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Would you like to amend this motion to add further, to add something about doing further investigation of this, the suitability of the property in the area for other purposes, or are you okay to go ahead with the appraisal? Okay, I know our planner was taking some notes about things that we should look at further.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Yeah, I don't think there's any, this isn't a rush to the end zone. It's not time sensitive. I don't think this needs to be done in the next 30 days before we start incurring costs for an appraisal. And if we are going to go out for an appraisal, I want to make sure we're getting the right appraisal. And I'd like to speak to that if that's what we're going to do. But I think that we should defer this until at least Mr. Jackson can come back to us. And I'd like to also address what Councillor Gore Matthews said. I never suggested at any point that we go out and buy the Anderson land right now. What I was simply saying is that as a council, before we start selling road allowances, that we think about the long term, 10, 20, 30 years from now. There may be a strategic use for that land, similar to what I said. Doesn't mean anyone has to buy or sell or offer or anything like that. I'm just saying there is a potential there, and that needs to be determined. And the first thing that needs to be done is they need to walk the property and see if we had all that property. If we did, as a municipality in the future, could we use it as setbacks and replace the Grange and have more parking? That's all it needs to be answered. And if the answer is yes, then there is a strategic value. Doesn't mean we have to go buy that property. In fact, we don't have to. Some other future council may want to, but that is our responsibility as a council. And that's all I'm trying to do, is protect the ratepayers of our municipality so that we're not making mistakes into the future, or making mistakes now that are going to affect us into the future. So thank you. I think we should not get an appraisal. If we're going to get an appraisal, I want to speak to it. I think we should let Mr. Jackson come back. And if he comes back next month, depending on what he says, we can always go out and get an appraisal after that. Otherwise, we may be just wasting money.
So you are asking to defer the motion then, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it should be deferred until Mr. Jackson comes back to us next.
Because we can
month.
do that
I think
too.
that's reasonable. I think that's reasonable.
Okay, is there is there an agreement on the part of council to defer, or do you wish to proceed with the?
I move the motion. I'm fine with deferring it for further information. Thank you.
The seconder was Councillor Gorham Matthews. Are you okay with deferring it? Councillor Gorham Matthews?
I suppose.
That sounded a little reluctant, but anyway. Are there any other comments? We didn't hear from Councillor Woods.
No, I'm fine with deferring it, Mr. Mayor. I think that would be the smartest thing at this point, rather than making people spend money or us spending money needlessly right now.
All right, I'm thinking maybe you're right as well. I'm going to mark it as deferred. Is there any objection to that? All right, hearing none. We'll defer it for further investigation. All right, thank you. We don't have a public meeting tonight. We do have a consent agenda. And it consists of two items, which are the meetings of the regular council meeting, the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 7th, 2021. And in addition, there are draft minutes of a recreation committee meeting that was held on June 15th, 2021. And they haven't been approved by the committee, but I thought that there was some material in there that the councilors and the public would perhaps be interested in what the committee was talking about. So I wanted to have them on the agenda for your benefit. So is there, can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone hereby receives and or approves the items contained in the consent agenda dated June 21st, 2021.
I will move, Councilor McEwen.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. Any discussion?
Yeah, Councillor Lamb.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on the on the recreation committee, the fireworks, I see it's, the recreation committee has suggested the Saturday, I guess, of Labor Day, and I'm okay with that. I guess the question that I have is, if we're in stage 3 by July 24th or July 21st or whatever it's projected to be, and maybe staff can answer this or maybe not. I take it that still wouldn't allow us to have people up in what I'll call the fairgrounds or whatever for fireworks if it was to be held on the civic holiday. Am I correct in assuming that in order to do that, even in September, that we'd have to be kind of beyond stage 3 and in wide open mode? Is that a fair comment? Because if it wasn't for COVID, I think it would be safe to say that many would, if it could be arranged, would love to see it on the Saturday of the civic holiday weekend. And then if it rained, the backup date being Labor Day weekend, because of course, what's going to happen this year in Labor Day weekend is you're going to have a lot of people and cottagers who may not even be here on Labor Day because the kids will be going back to school for the first time in many, many months in many cases. So again, I'm okay with the Saturday of Labor Day, but I take it that COVID is sort of driving all this, and that it's under the assumption that we won't be fully open. Is that correct? So that's a question to someone.
Well, I will try to answer it, and perhaps our CAO clerk may want to comment further. We're part of the problem is that there is uncertainty, not simply a matter of when exactly will we be in various stages of reopening, but what the reopening of stage 3 will look like. And if you look at the provincial guidelines, you'll see that it tells us what's going to happen in phase 2, which we'll get to around the 1st of July, I guess. But for phase 3, it says further, sort of something like further, I don't have it in front of me, further loosening of restrictions or something like that. And it doesn't say exactly what. So if we follow the 21 days, we would indeed, by the August, the civic holiday weekend, we would be in phase 3. The problem is it's a little difficult to determine in advance what that would be, what that would mean. And so in making plans, I guess, is the problem. I wouldn't say it's necessarily out of the question. We will still, even if we're post phase 3, there may be some requirements for some sort of physical distancing of groups or that sort of thing. And the recreation committee talked about ways that we might be able to do that. So that the September date was chosen out of, I guess you could call it an abundance of caution, and it might turn out in say in a, as we get to the 1st of July, it might turn out that some of that uncertainty is reduced. I don't know. So it's not that I want to say no, forget it. It's just we were trying to not set an expectation that had too many that look like it had too many things that might prejudice. And by the way, the other thing that can prejudice it is the dry weather we're having and we're expecting to continue to have, which if our fire rating goes up again, then of course we would end up not being able to do it like we did a couple of years, like we had happen a couple of years ago.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding either of these sets of minutes? If not, can we approve and or receive them? Everybody okay with that? All right. Thank you. And matters arising from the consent agenda, we've already, I'll just say, discussed possibility of fireworks. I'm just writing a note here, fireworks on August. It's not really August 1st, I don't think, but I think it's July
Civic
31st.
holiday.
Sorry, what's that?
Just say civic holiday weekend.
Well, all right, yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Item 8, accounts payable. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone approve accounts payable in the amount of $77,893.58 and payroll in the amount of $29,226.96 for payment.
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Wood.
I'll second Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, please, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. 36020, page 3, which is page 65 of 130. FAD Architects Inc., Reno Design, Administration, Municipal Building, Reno Design, $1,065. So what's happening with the office building design or redesign? We've got updates on dog bylaws. We've got updates on rental properties. What's the update on the office design? Or is there one?
Yeah, there is one. I mean, it's a very, very brief update. The task force did meet to consider some possible designs that the architect, Brenda Ryan is her name, that's FAD Architects, that she had prepared as possible ways of renovating the existing space that is within the current envelope of the municipal office. The task force met last week, it was the week before actually, and took a look at those and had a discussion about some of those options and decided to go back to the architect with some further suggestions as to how it might be possible to do what we'd asked her to do in the first place. And once again, I will ask our CAO clerk if she wants to comment further, but she did, I know she has spoken to her and she's to Brenda Ryan, and Brenda's in the process of looking at some, trying to incorporate some feedback that came from the task force. The goal is to try to get a, again, some slightly revised drawings or somewhat revised drawings from the architect. Once we have those, the task force will meet again. And my hope would be that at that point in time, we would be in a position to bring a more fulsome report to council for council to review. So that's where this is going. Madam CAO.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. I met with Brenda Ryan on Friday and provided her with the feedback from all of the folks that joined the task force, the original task force, and there were a few others that joined the meeting for comment and input. And she's going to take those suggestions and see if she can incorporate what was prioritized as needs and try to still work in, if possible, the existing footprint with perhaps some modifications based on input that we received. And she indicated that it'll be a fairly quick turnaround and we should have something by the end of the week to, again, meet with the group of people who have interest and make comment on the designs.
Okay.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that what comes back isn't sort of a fait accompli. I'm sure there's people on the committee who have different ideas that may get their way or not get their way, and I'm sure other councillors. There's 3 councillors, of course, not on this, which is fine. I'm not questioning the process that you're going through, nor am I asking for anything that isn't produced at this point. I just want to make sure that there's wiggle room for ideas within the current footprint once we do get whatever comes back to us, right? Similar to the process we're going to be going through tonight on the dog and the rental bylaws.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I don't see us finalizing either one of those 2 tonight. So all I'm saying is the same sort of thing will occur, right?
Yeah, no, we're not finalizing anything on this.
Good.
In fact, it's not on the agenda because the goal was to try to get the task force to come up with a consensus in terms of what they believe is reasonable and doable, and have that come back to council for with some drawings that you can look at and something that can be discussed further.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Anything else under payables? All right, if there are no other comments or questions, I will ask our clerk to call the roll for the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yes.
Councillor Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
And Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Thank you. All right, we have sorry, I'm just looking. I have item 9. Okay, sorry. It said bylaws none, and that's a correct statement because we do have a draft bylaw, but it's just a draft and it's for discussion under 11, item 11. So we'll get there momentarily. We have staff reports on a couple of items. The first one is a contract award for the installation of the 2 electronic message signs, the one in front of the municipal office and the one in front of the library. So here is a motion. Proposed motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report Public Works 2021-03 for information, which is a contract award for the installation of 2 electronic message signs, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone awards the contract for the supply and installation of 2 electronic message signs to Cox Signs Limited, Walkerton, Ontario, in the amounts as follows. And the larger sign for the, in front of the Dunchurch Community Center is $33,932 plus HST, and the Whitestone Library, and the one in front of the Whitestone Library and Technology Center is $28,834 plus HST. And further, that Cox Signs Limited be advised that the contract award is subject to the municipality receiving sign permits from the Ministry of Transportation. Would somebody like to move that, please?
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Okay, seconded by,
I'll second Councillor Woods.
okay, thank you. Now, I'm just checking to see, I don't believe our manager of Public Works is with us.
I am.
Oh, yes, he is. My apologies, David. So David would be available to answer questions that any of us might have about this tender and the. Go ahead, please.
So if I may, in the 2021 budget, we identified the purchase of the 2 digital signs, both for the community center, larger one for the community center, and the small one for the library. And these RFPs were put out April 20th, and they closed on May 13th. We did receive the 3 proposals from the following contractors. There was Cox Signs, Pattison Sign Group, and Bilicki Signs. And they were thorough, beautiful proposals. A lot of time went into them, and we got some great proposals in there. All the bidders complied with the RFP, and Cox Sign was low bid, and they are recommended for the award of this. They are a family company, I believe it's 2nd generation, since 1963, family-run company out of Walkerton. We did check their references. All of them came back positive. They had a lot of work with many school boards and do quite a few of these signs. The community center did come in under budget. However, the library came in just above budget. But the library CEO did advise that the additional cost can be absorbed by the library budget. These signs are double-sided, high-definition signs. They do include a 5-year warranty, 2-year service plan. They offer training for staff over the phone and online. The community center will have a wireless communication to it, so it'll be able to be controlled wirelessly. The library, however, has a hardwire. They requested they were set up for a hardwire control, so they can control it right from inside the library, right to the computer. They do have controls for daylight and nighttime, as well as brightness and other functions. They do come with the protective Lexan coating on the outside, the durable Lexan. They all come with that. And they all are all backlit. So our logos will be all backlit inside them as well. Public Works will have to help out a little bit with the removal of the existing sign at the community center and some of the excavation work as well. Help save costs from bringing in outside contractors. And from there, the MTO permit was applied for with the information provided. The MTO is scheduled to get back to us with their permit for July 15th. However, they had staff changes and shortages, so they're not sure they can meet the date. The manager, when I talked to the manager in the Department of Signs, and I did talk to the actual person that's looking after our sign, and they are moving on it. I've talked to her 3 times now, and she's moving on. So we do hope that we will get our July 15th permit. And I believe that covers just about everything on the sign. If anyone has any questions.
Well, thank you, Davey. You did answer several questions that I was going to ask if nobody else had, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's Councillor Lamb. Yeah, thank you, David. And I think you guys did a great job on this. I just wanted to point out that the library sign, a grant was written a couple years ago and a grant was received. I thought it was for either $30,000 or $35,000 to cover the cost of that sign. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not that the library sign is being, absorbed by the taxpayer. That's a grant that we received. So, secondly, we did have a library board meeting this afternoon, and again, there were a couple things on the sign, but one of the things was the design that's showing in our package shows the municipality of Whitestone at the top of the library sign and their logo, when it's going to be, I think, the library logo, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct with that?
That's absolutely doable. It does take a little bit of massaging with the request for proposal. This was just how they proposed it, and there's certainly room for us to move that around and change the logo. Absolutely.
Okay, well, maybe what you need to do is go back to Peggy and to Eva, because
Yes.
the way it was relayed to me this afternoon was that's going to be done, not it's doable. So just make sure you go back to them and that everyone's
Absolutely.
agreed. Okay,
Thank you very much for bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, is there, yeah, oh, yes, I see. All right. I know, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the pictures to understand what that comment was about, but yeah, I see it. Okay. Go ahead. Other,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. These signs will be very welcome additions to the downtown. They've been long overdue, especially the one at the community center. I think it's been a health concern, issue concern in the winter, and trying to change the wordage on that sign has been no small feat, which staff have risen to the occasion for. So thank you to everyone that got it this far. Appreciate it.
there seems to be a phone line that is beeping here. Do we know what that is? I think it is 416-230-5142, whoever that is. Can I ask our host to check into that? Okay, it's gone. All right, thank you. Other questions about the signs or comments about the signs from councillors?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Go
I don't
ahead.
have any questions. I think it's going to be a fantastic addition to downtown. I know driving through McKellar, especially at night when those lights start flashing, you can clearly read any messaging that's there. And I think it's going to do a lot to inform people on what we have going on at the community center and the going ons in the library. And I think it's going to be absolutely great. And everybody did a fantastic job putting all this together. And it's going to be great when it comes to fruition.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I did have one more thought from about these signs, and this I guess I'll pose as a question to Dave. By the way, and what brought it to my attention was the reference to McKellar's sign, because McKellar's sign has this, it seems to me, has a relatively small message area, and it's a single color, which is red. At least I've never seen any other color on it. But I'm wondering, Dave, you mentioned that the sign can be controlled remotely. And in the case of the municipal one, there's going to be a wireless link between the municipal office and the sign. I think that's what I heard you say. Do you know, did you take a look at what sort of flexibility exists in terms of what you can actually put on the sign. You know, is it full color? Can you put graphics in it? Can you can you make it scroll or up or down or fade in and out or do different things of that sort? I'm asking because I don't see anywhere what actual display modules you're using inside it. Or the owner, the supplier is using inside it. So
That's an excellent question. We did have all three bidders provide us with high definition, red, green, and blue, which is full color, full graphics with the software to go along with it. Each of them had their own variation of software, which does allow us to control how things are put up. The MTO will have some guidelines as to the time in between the messages and how they're presented. I think just a minor amount of, I don't think they want them on top of each other. I think they want a little bit of time in between one message to the next message. That's about it. But yeah, I believe that there's quite a bit of controls here. It's 2021 and pretty much everything now is high definition. Even if we wanted to go with a low definition single color, they'd be hard to come by. The value is we're getting good value on our boards. They're CSA approved, and a lot of these boards have been around for a few years now. So I think we'll do just fine on that. There is some flexibility with this proposal if there was concerns, but they'll both be the same size. They're identified in the drawings here what the displays are, and they're actually quite nice. The images that they provide, they're quite crisp. So, I hope that answers your question.
You've seen do I take it you've seen a sample of the sign in operation somewhere, have you? Or
so there's what there is we did request a P10, what they call a P10, which is a measurement for distance between pixels, and that does relate directly to the definition, like how crisp the sign is. And there's a standard specification for like a P10 will give you a certain definition, a P12 or a P15 will give you a certain definition. They're very specific. So for the signs, and that's what we did provide them, and they did provide us some samples of how crisp they'd be, which is high. It meets the high definition criteria. So I'm happy to share that. I can share that out and pass it out to council.
okay, well, that's thanks for that. I didn't actually see the RFP, so I don't. Sorry, I'm catching up on what you asked them to provide. But anyway, are there any further? Not to prolong this, are there any further questions or comments from councilors? Are you ready for the question? If so, I guess I will, given the size of the contract, I will ask our clerk to read the roll, please, for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gordon Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. Moving along. Next one is a slurry seal treatment and surface treatment for all right. I'll read the requested motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report Public Works 2021-04 slurry seal treatment and surface treatment, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby awards tender 2021-07 slurry seal treatment and surface treatment to Duncor Enterprises in the amount of $257,162 plus HST. Can I get a mover and seconder for that?
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by,
I'll second Councilor McEwen.
okay, thank you. And this is for, I was looking for this in the motion, but it doesn't really have to be there. 1.45 kilometers of Whitestone Lake Road from Highway 520 to the snowplow turnaround, plus 100 meters into the gravel portion of Whitestone Lake Road, 100 meters of Maple Island Road from 520 in 100 meters, and 600 meters of Farley's Road, hill after the bridge, and repair patches to 8 culvert locations on Canning Road. I think I've got all of that. So
No, you got Balsam and isn't there slurry seal on Balsam and part of Can?
oh yeah, that's sorry, that's the surface treatment. This is slurry seal of 1.18 kilometers of Balsam, 1.6 kilometers of Canning, and 2.7 kilometers of Bunny Trail. From 520 to Snakeskin Lane. So anyway, we have a mover and seconder. Once again, I should give our Director of Public Works the opportunity if he wants to introduce any of this or comment on it, explain any of it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There was a couple items added in addition to our 2021 planned work, and that was the additional work was the 100 meters on Maple Island Road right after Highway 520 leading north. There's a rough area there that needed repairs. That was we grinded that up or milled that up and got a little bit of gravel on it, and it's prepared for repairs, as well as Farley's Road was identified as well, that hill, as needing stabilization, something to hold it, and surface treatment will do the trick, and that'll go right up over the hill. And that'll certainly save on our frequency of how often we get out there with our grader. It doesn't take too much to chew up the hill from some of the vehicles heading up there, as well as the washouts that occur from the rain events. So this should go a long way with helping our maintenance activities as well. So those items were added, and we were still met our budget amount, so it's still within our capital budget amount. And Duncor was the low bid. They worked for us last year, and they do good work. The material is coming out of their pit from Seguin, so that's where it came last year, and it seemed to be good material. So everything looks good going forward for this year.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from councilors? Okay, hearing none, I will ask our clerk once again to read the roll for the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Gore Matthews.
You're muted, Councillor Gore Matthews.
I said yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry. We didn't hear you, sorry.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Next, we need a motion to award a tender to supply, deliver, mix, and stockpile winter sand or granite screenings. That the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report Public Works 2021-05 which was tender 2021-03 to supply, deliver, mix, and stockpile winter sand or granite screenings. And that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby award the supply, delivery, mixing, and stockpiling of 2,000 tons of winter sand, that's 2,000 metric tons, in the amount of $24,400 plus HST to A. Myron Topsoil Limited. And I get a mover and seconder for this one.
I'll move Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods.
I'll second Counselor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Anything you want to tell us about this, David?
Yes, thank you. Again, we are looking for winter sand. The 2,000 ton will fill our sand dome. We do have a pile from last year that was covered when my predecessor, the manager of public works, Brian Sheridan, put up a pile and he put a cover over it, and the cover remains, and that sand's in good shape. So that should be carryover sand for this winter, and we just need enough to fill our sand dome this year. So we should be in good shape. Miro Topsoil did supply us winter sand last year, and they do supply a lot of our surrounding municipalities as well. We are in budget.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb. Councillor Lamb, you're muted.
Yes, sorry.
Councillor McEwen.
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to the item that you've all been waiting for, item 11.1, memo draft regulating of dogs bylaw. And the motion that I'm looking for is very simple, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive the draft regulating of dogs bylaw for information and provides the following direction. So there's an opportunity for us to fill that in discussion, but can I get a mover and seconder just to get it on the floor, please?
I'll move for discussion purposes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Woods, seconded by, is that Councillor Gorham Matthews, I heard?
Yes, for
All
discussion.
right. So it's moved and seconded. I don't know if I'll ask our CAO, is there anyone who would like to introduce this on behalf of the task force that worked on it, or?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, our Deputy Clerk Judy Manx has been involved in this closely with the group. So I've asked her to do an introduction, start with why we're looking at the bylaw, some of the changes that were initiated, and she will give council a bit of an overview on the discussions that were had.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Thank you. So just a little history on how this came to be. So Councillor Lamb had requested that the CAO clerk add the dog bylaw review to unfinished business back in January 2021. The ad hoc committee was formed by council in March of 2021, And the current bylaw that we're using was passed in 2005. So it's a 16-year-old bylaw. The members who were assigned to the ad hoc committee include Councillor Lamb, Councillor Woods, our bylaw enforcement officer, Paul Rossiter, and the clerk's office and prosecutor, Paul Dre, were available for specific questions throughout the process. Areas that were requested to be reviewed and updated include the matter of excessive barking and leash requirements. The ad hoc committee met 3 times, April 15th, May 20th, and June 4th. And we found that there were many items in the 16-year-old bylaw that required updating. For instance, we didn't have anything in about a muzzle order. So it was requested that that be adopted as well. And then the specific changes from our previous bylaw are outlined in the memorandum in the agenda package. And that pretty much is how this came to be.
Okay, thank you. I wonder, we have received a number of written comments, and I see that some of the folks who have sent these comments in are in fact on this call tonight, but do we have a summary of
Mr. Mayor?
Comments that have been received? Yes.
Sorry,
Councilman?
sorry. I just add a couple of things because the reason I asked for this to come forward was because in a discussion with our bylaw officer in December, January over a certain instance, I said, well, the dog wasn't on leash and running around on the road. And the bylaw officer said, we have no leash requirement when off property on roads. And I didn't think that was right. So I thought we should review the bylaw. And so, and I also agreed to be on the committee. So when we got into the bylaw, there was all kinds of stuff that I had no idea was in the 205 bylaw. I don't think I was on council in 205, but anyway, for instance, there were things in there that you had to be 18 years of age in order to walk a dog in the municipality of Whitestone, which was almost laughable. Well, it was laughable. And we said that, and then it was kind of got feedback of, well, you have to have an age in there. And we said, no, all this be as a responsible sort of person to and if it's a kid walking the dog and the parents are responsible sort of. So we got into some of this stuff that was pretty draconian in my mind. But at no point, many of the things that are coming up over the weekend when people looked at this, and I really appreciate all the people bringing forward all these things, because I'm sure as heck not a veterinarian or an expert on dog bylaw things. And so I think what it shows is that our community is engaged, and I think that's fabulous. And I think they're bringing up a whole bunch of things that some of them were discussed in the committee, and there are answers too. And there's other things that are new that they're bringing to light. So I think what we need to do is go back with all these various emails and take all the suggestions and redo them and rework them and rediscuss them and come back and answer every email, by the way, as to either clarifying for them or explaining to them why it may or may not work. So there's a lot more work for this committee to do. And I don't want the dog bylaw thing to be seen as any kind of fait accompli. It was just brought back as a sort of, here's where we are. Okay. And again, there's a number of things that I don't know whether leashes should be 2 meters or 10 meters. I don't know. My main concern was the leash, and also the complaints I've had over the years as a counselor have to do with excessive barking. And I'm not talking odd barking, I'm talking excessive barking, hours and hours on end. So those were the two issues that I thought needed addressing. And but all the things surrounding hunting dogs, that was all discussed, and there's answers to that. All the things that are coming up with respect to some other, working farm dogs and things like that, there are answers that have come up with that, on that, that I think are reasonable. There was also, we discussed fully, and Councillor Woods and I were both adamant about euthanasia and stuff like that, that there's no way in God's green earth that Paul Rossiter should be deciding on euthanasia of a dog. That was, we both fought back adamantly on that because we don't think it should be. We said the only person that could do that is a certified vet or vet technician or someone. So somehow some of these things didn't get themselves into the bylaw that you're looking at tonight, but I can assure you that they were discussed by Councillor, by the committee, and that Councillor Woods and I did bring them up. So I'm just filling in the blanks a little bit, that this is not, a fait accompli, and that I think there's a lot more work to be done in terms of answering all the questions of people. And again, I'm excited that we have an electorate that's asking these questions. It shows they're engaged, and I'm happy for that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. I wonder, just before we sort of open it up to discussion, our bylaw enforcement officer, Paul Rossiter, is on this call, and he may be able to answer some questions or make some comments. But I wondered if he, I would be particularly interested to know what's, and this is in the spirit of asking the question that I would always ask before trying to revise a bylaw, which is what's the problem we're trying to solve. And in this particular case, I would be interested to know what kinds of complaints our bylaw officer has had in the past, how many of them, and what problems he encountered in terms of trying to deal with them. We used to get reports, Paul, from you at regular intervals about what issues you were dealing with, but I haven't actually seen one of those for a while. So anyway, maybe you could comment a bit on that particular subject.
Well, first of all, I can't ever recall putting myself in a position where I would euthanize a dog. I would, if the dog was in, let's just say, such a state that it needed to be looked after by a veterinarian, and I would allow the veterinarian to make that call, not me. So I just want to make that clear first of all. So in regards to the complaints over the years, recently there has not been a lot, but mostly were dogs at large. And in addition to the dogs at large, there were complaints of persistent barking, all of which, I should say, most of which were addressed and compliance was met. In a small number of cases, charges were laid. And I may add that there were cases of trespassing as well. So charges were laid for trespassing, charges were laid for dog at large, and there was one charge laid for persistent barking. And for the persistent barking charge, there were, from my recollection, 6 civilian witnesses. And a conviction was registered against the dog owner. and he was put on probation for 6 months. The other offenses were offense notices, basically a ticket with 3 options. And there were some minor fines obtained, but nothing substantial. But overall, as I've always said in the past, the members of this community comply with, well, there's over 90% compliance rate within this community in regards to dogs and any other bylaw violations. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Mr. Mayor, or if you want me to elaborate a little more.
No, that's, thank you. That's just, I appreciate your comments, Paul. Other counselors who might wish to comment on this or ask questions? Councillor Gorham.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
I've got Councillor Gorham Matthews first, Councillor Woods, and we'll get to you next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple comments. Some of this is similar to what we've been reviewing with the animal bylaw that the Agricultural Committee has been working on. And just a few comments on that have arose from discussions, and we've had some pretty lengthy discussions on some of similar type wording and things. So I would just mention for under 7.2, it says an officer may enter on land in a reasonable time for the purpose of inspection to determine if this bylaw is being complied with. So it doesn't mention that a complaint has been made. It just says that someone's going to enter your land for an inspection. So we really discussed that, you know, it needs to be complaint based. You know, this just says that somebody's going to enter someone's land. And we also have had discussions that have been quite lengthy with regards to making reasonable efforts to contact ratepayers before entering their land to do an inspection or to review a complaint. So I think that those are some wording that should be added to 7.2, is that there should be a complaint prior to entering someone's land, and that you should make reasonable efforts to contact the people living there before going on to their land. For 6.6, we've had quite lengthy discussions about animals when they're sick or injured. And even with the discussions we had with the bylaw officer that attended some of our meetings, she said that she was never comfortable euthanizing an animal, and unless it was under dire circumstances, and they would always call a vet. So I think we should include that wording, that a vet would be consulted prior to going that route. We've also had lengthy discussions with regards to unclaimed animals for under 6.1. And I think we should change that wording to reflect the policies that would be followed by the pound or the place that the animals would be sent to. It shouldn't be our policy to euthanize an animal after 7 days. I think have a number of resources in the community up in Boston. There's the All Hearts Rescue and things like that that help place animals. So, yeah, so I know Councillor Lamb mentioned about hunting dogs. I can't find anything in this bylaw that mentions, so maybe that's coming up in the next draft. And the other comment that I would have is under leash. I think it depends on the situation. If you're walking down Farley's Road, you could certainly have a leash longer than 2 meters. So I think, you know, where you've changed the wording to say keep under the control of a capable person, we could say something quite similar to for the length of the leash, an appropriate leash, rather than defining the length. So yeah, those were kind of my main comments. Just some of the wording is very vague, and we've had quite lengthy discussions on some of this, and I'm happy to share some of the notes with the committee, but that we've had on our discussion with the animal bylaw that kind of relates to this. So yeah, I'll wrap that up. I'm sure Councillor Woods has similar sentiments because he's on the agricultural committee as well and can confirm some of those discussions that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woods?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, when it comes to this draft and the whole committee process, there was multiple things that I had a problem with in this draft, and I definitely don't think that we're close to finishing this. Councillor Lamb and I did bring up a couple of points, or quite a few actually, during the committee meetings. But to me, it seems that the wording that we're getting and the advice that we're getting from Paul Dre is kind of what's putting a stop to what the suggestions that Councillor Lamb and I brought up. I mean, I could go through this line by line during the council meeting. I don't think everybody would appreciate how much time I would take because we'd be here all night on this one. But I would like to assure every taxpayer in this community that I'm not happy with the way a lot of this is worded. I think we can do a better job. I'm gonna push as hard as I can to make sure that we get something here that suits this community, because I don't think that this does in the least. Some of the sections that Beth pointed out, and I mean, I don't know about the rest of council, but myself, I was on the phone Saturday for probably about 10 hours with different ratepayers calling me and emailing me, and then I would call them to discuss this with them. And all of their concerns that they brought up and all of the emails that were sent in, I raised these concerns during the committee meeting. 7.2 being the one that most people are extremely offended by, and I'm one of them. An officer may enter a land at any reasonable time for the purposes for inspection to determine if this bylaw is being complied with. On the agricultural committee, we had a great discussion, and it took up a lot of meetings actually, just on this one. The Municipal Act reads that a municipality can give this power to the bylaw officer. Do I think we should? Absolutely, positively not. I don't think that our bylaw officer, Paul Rossiter, would take it to any sort of extremes. I mean, Paul's a very mild-mannered, fair person from my understandings and my dealings that I've had with him. And I discussed with him, but I don't like the wording in there at all. If, a simple phone call goes a long way or a knock on the door goes a long way. But if the people are upset to the point where the way that reads is the bylaw officer doesn't even have to present himself. He can just walk in and start doing what he wants. And I will never agree to that. And I don't think anybody in this community would, to be honest with you. The euthanizing and the officer, I specifically stated that we have to get rid of officer and we have to get rid of euthanizing. Myself, I own dogs. I've owned dogs and bred dogs my whole life, and my family's done it for generations. And my dogs aren't pets, they're family members. So, I mean, yeah, you can consult a vet, absolutely. I agree with that, a vet or a vet tech. But at the end of the day, if you're going to put an animal down, no matter what, it is the right of the owner to decide that. I myself have spent more money than most people would even begin to fathom when it came to fix a dog that was injured. Even my vet told me, "You're crazy, Brian, don't spend this money." And I said, "No, that's my best friend right there. I'll spend whatever I have to save him." So I just want to ensure everybody in the community that I myself and Councillor Lamb are working very hard to make sure that we get a bylaw that suits this community. And a lot of this bylaw, I see it as cut and paste from big cities, and I don't think any ratepayer here would appreciate it. Yes, we need a little bit of bylaws to regulate things, but we don't need over-the-top bylaws for cities that will never suit a community like this. I also think that there are multiple people that sent in letters that have great qualifications that we should bring into the committee. There was the one lady, she was a vet tech. I don't want to say her name because I didn't ask her permission. But someone like that, I think, would be a great resource for us to bring into the committee to look at these things with us. I'll leave it at that for now. But I definitely think there's a heck of a lot more work that needs done here. And we need to respect the wishes of the ratepayers of this community when we're doing any bylaw.
Well, Counselor, can I comment on one of those, let's just say, sections?
That would
Sure, be-
go ahead, yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Paul
Counselor
Rossler.
Wood, yeah, he brought up the section 7.2. The officer may enter on land at any reasonable time for the purpose of inspection to determine if this bylaw is being complied with. Well, perhaps the word inspection is a little too strong, but the word investigation does come into play a lot of times, especially when there is a dog at large. If I make attempts to try and find the owner of that dog, then I'll enter upon that property, especially if I get information from neighbors, for instance. Then I'll make an attempt to return that dog to the rightful owner. So that's why I go on that property. In addition to that, in the past, and it hasn't been recently, but dogs have attacked people, dogs being at large to begin with. So in order to follow through with that investigation to find out where that dog is from, I have to enter upon property in order to determine who owns that dog. Am I gonna be looking in people's windows? No. Am I gonna be going in people's backyards to try and find them? No. I will leave a card, I will leave a note, and if that fails, I'll send them a correspondence, or of course, the old phone call always comes in handy. And I've always, let's just say, used that tool in the past. And I don't think anybody's been upset with me coming on their property to follow through with any type of an investigation in regards to the dog bylaw. Not that I'm aware of. So hopefully that does give peace of mind to the residents and guest visitors to Whitestone.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Mr. Mayor, could I say something back to Paul for that? Councillor Woods.
I'll let you, Councillor Woods, but I think we're just about running out of time for discussion on this one. Go ahead.
I will be very quick. Paul, I have the utmost confidence in you. You know that. And I don't think anybody is going to say that you don't do your job well. I've dealt with you personally, and I'm not afraid to tell people that during a public meeting. You are a very, very good bylaw agent. A dog at large and you having to chase a dog onto a property, 100% I agree with that. But the way this is worded is you could walk in to see how many dogs I have without knocking on my door. That's what I have a problem with. And I don't think you would do that. Actually, I'm pretty confident you wouldn't do that. But we're writing bylaws. You know, this hasn't been done in 16 years. So if you're not here in 16 years and we have someone else and they interpret that line a different way, that's what the potential problem is. That's all I was saying, Paul.
Okay, Brian, no problem. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I didn't ask if Councillor McEwen is the only one the councillor who hasn't spoken, if you had any comments, but it seems quite obvious that what we're going to do is refer this back to the task force. So go ahead, Councillor McEwen.
I would ask that you allow each of us permission or give us the right to go through the whole thing and make some comments and notes on it and put that back to the committee. It's probably a summary or information that are coming from other folks, but each of us, and I've lived here a very long time. I've gone through hunting and farming and trapping and different situations where dogs are companions and work dogs, etc. So there can be some definition of some different items included in this bylaw, which I don't think should be too offensive to a lot of people. One area I think we're missing on a bit, I'll just leave this one as a note. I feel we should have a, say, an educational section in the bylaw somewhere to assist people in knowing what some sort of hunting rules are, when hunting happens, to be cautious of. Baiting of animals for hunting purposes is a concern if it's not done properly. And people have to be aware when they're walking their dogs at certain times during the year that a scent from a bait could attract their dog to a dangerous location. Just a few things like that. That's not to get into an argument against hunting by any methods, but just an awareness type thing as part of our bylaw would not be a bad idea in my mind, just as an educational tool for people bringing their dogs into the area, especially if the new people coming in. They're not familiar with a lot of the things that could be happening around them, which seems perfectly safe and normal and should be. But if we could just forward to the committee comments, which, and unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, we haven't received this until just very recently ourselves as counselors, other than the ones on the committee. So it gives us a chance to give some comments. So I'd like to be able to send my comments as a complete rework of the draft, just with comments on it to the committee for review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. I think we've had a good discussion, and I do want to thank the members of the community who've provided input in writing and have raised a number of subjects that certainly resonated with me, and I think also you know, with some members of the committee. So or with the task force. I mean, so what I think we're doing is referring it back in effect to the task force to do some further work and take these comments into consideration. So the motion that we had was that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives the draft regulating of dogs bylaw for information and provides direction, and I think we've done that. Can I call the question in effect and ask for approval of that motion? Does anyone have any objection? Hearing none, I'll declare it approved, and we'll await further you know, further results from the task force. We also have an update on the review that's taking place of the rental bylaw. And there have also been some comments about this one. Here's the motion I'm looking for: that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive the update on rental unit bylaw review for information and provides direction to staff to initiate a zoning bylaw amendment as recommended by Municipal Prosecutor Paul Dre in order to align the zoning bylaw with the intent of the rental unit bylaw. Could I get a mover and seconder for that, please?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second, Councillor McEwen.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. Are there any discussions or comments or that? Madam CAO, did you have anything you wanted to say about where we're at in this process, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The process isn't very far because it was discussed quite early at first meeting that it would be important for Paul Dre to have a look at this, and he did that well. It took him a bit of time. Paul Dre has found himself involved in other rental unit bylaws and a number of other municipalities. So we thought it was important that he look at it from an enforcement perspective, provided some good comments, the most important being that it needed to align with our zoning bylaw. Now, there are other pieces of the bylaw that, you know, what I call the internal details of policy wording that this committee can proceed with in parallel to the work that's going to be done on our zoning bylaw. And my sense is the folks that are involved, Councillor McEwen and Councillor Lamb, would agree that these things could happen in parallel, and that will continue. The rental meeting bylaws will continue once council gives us direction to proceed with the zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, Councillor Lamb, just a couple comments. I think Councillor McEwen will agree. The issue with this, and the reason I wanted to be on this committee, is a couple of things. I was part of the architect of the first bylaw some, I don't know, 8 years ago or so. But the result of it is, of course, with Airbnbs and more people, higher prices of cottages and more people perhaps renting them out, we need to take a look at this bylaw, because quite frankly, there aren't very many people in our community that have licenses, and I may be out of whack, but I think it's something like a dozen or so. Well, as anyone in would realize, there's far more than a dozen people renting in our community. And some of these people, particularly bad renters, cause issues. So, and the other thing is, because we had put in, initially we were trying to be kind to everybody and say that it would be 2 weeks that everyone could kind of have for free, if someone did your roof and you wanted to say, stay at the cottage, for the roof price or whatever arrangement, right? 2 weeks could be free, but that's made it. And I think the bylaw officer will back me up on this. That in itself has made it practically unenforceable, because you have to line up, 3 weeks of rentals, and then people would have to go to court, and it just has made it really impossible. So we need to take a look. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have far more people with a license and far more people, who we would end up with good behavior, let's just say that. And we could enforce it with meaningful fines if they're not following this. So we're working along that, but before we could make any steps, as the CAO said, we had to check with Paul Dre as to what we would need to do in order to reach some of these objectives. And Paul told us we couldn't have the 2 week thing. So that's why it's before you tonight. And of course, this whole subject is you're going to have a very split community, because many people don't think there should be any rental, and others do. So we're trying our best. And again, now that with your concurrence that the 2 week thing can be waived, and we won't have it in the future, I think we can work in parallel. But that's what this is all about. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Lamb. Any other comments from members of the task force or from?
Yeah, I can concur with Councillor Lamb, Mr. Mayor. The ad hoc committee looked through many items, of course, being environmental and things from noise bylaw to parking, so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on. There are many issues to look at. So we can start looking at addressing them once we get our zoning bylaw updated and move forward. I don't think we're trying to stick it to people who are doing the right thing, for sure. We just like to see more people take out their license or permits and follow the rules, which I think a lot do, and a lot will conform, give them a little bit of a nudge and assistance, I'm sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else about this particular one? If not,
Mr. Mayor.
oh, sorry, Councillor Gore Matthews, go ahead.
Oh, I don't have anything to say, but somebody has their hand up. I don't know if someone's allowed to speak at this portion of the meeting, or if it's related to this.
You're right. Who is John, may I ask?
It's John Brennan.
Oh, okay, John, do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, a very probably 30-second, 60-second comment. As most of you know, Lynn and I have owned property here for 21 years, and one of our properties indeed is Airbnb. I'm struggling with understanding what the nature of this action is. And the reason I say that is that all of my noise complaints are with my neighbors, and we never call for assistance. If the issue is noise complaints, they have to be dealt with as noise complaints. I have several other Airbnb people by us, and we don't get any noise from them. So I think this initiative seems to have taken on a life of its own, that there's a basic bias against people that rent. And as Councillor Lamb said earlier, and I quote, "I want to make sure that there is room for ideas inside the current footprint." And that's what I would like.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure the task force will take this into consideration. As was said earlier, I don't think that I don't think the real intent is to prevent people from renting, but the intent is to prevent. We have had quite a few instances of folks renting of renters not respecting the normal rules of behavior that are prevalent in Whitestone, and resulting in complaints from the neighbors. And so we're trying to figure out how to get regulations that are enforceable, so that when we do have situations like this, we can deal with them in some sort of adequate way. So, but thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, I will.
Mayor, sorry. Mr. Mayor, it's Paul Rosser.
Oh,
again.
Paul, sure, go ahead.
Just to comment on the, let's just say, rental situation again. Although charges have not been laid under the rental bylaw, charges have been laid under the noise bylaw and the dog bylaw in relation to people who rent cottages or seasonal dwellings within the municipality. And there is presently a charge before the courts in relation to noise caused by renters at a specific address. So I'm not sure when this court date is going to start up again, but it is ongoing trial, an ongoing trial which got closed down because of COVID. And our CAO has been updated on that, and I'll continue to update her on it in the future.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Just, Mr. Mayor, if I could just respond to John a bit. There are also a lot of people who have noise and other violations who are not renters. And so it's not just renters, but, and I'm sure, John, you're doing a great job with your Airbnb, but I will assure you that the number of calls that I've had, not just with Airbnbs, but people who just generally rent their cottages out, and the issues related to everything from fireworks to destruction on roads by people who don't know the road, liability issues, and many other things are significant. Our community has made it okay to rent in our community, and whereas other communities like Seguin, of course, have said, taken the opposite approach to say you can't. And this relates also into our zoning bylaws. So we're trying to to make it so that people can rent. And my objective is to just make sure that we get the best possible behavior from people, and that owners are being responsible. So, which I'm sure most of them are. But unfortunately, like most things in the world, you end up dealing with the 5% who cause 95% of the problems. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Can I call the question on this motion, please? Anyone opposed to approving it? All right, thank you. It's approved. Next one, an update on the West Parry Sound Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And I need a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive the West Parry Sound Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Heads of Council update for information. Who'd like to move that?
I'll move it, Councilor Lamb.
Okay, I heard Councillor Lamb, and I believe I heard Councillor Gorham Matthews. Is that
Yes,
correct? So you're seconding.
yes, that's fine.
All right, thank you. And I will turn this over to our CAO clerk. She wants to introduce it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to actually, with your permission, turn it over to our fire chief, Bob Whitman. Bob has been involved in this as the other fire chiefs have, and I'm sure that he can give you a much better update than I can based on his involvement with the committee.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, please, Bob.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to my deputy fire chief, Janice Spray, because she's actually been doing most of the work on this. So I'll turn it over to her.
Go ahead, Janice. You got nobody left to delegate to.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Great. Well, I'll just give you a quick overview. That this is something that has come out of the Ministry of the Solicitor General's office, and it was started a few years ago. They did some surveys and trying to figure out ways of doing policing in a different way so as to be able to be more cost efficient and also more collaborative. And so what they've come up with is community safety and well-being plans, and they have mandated that every municipal council will need to prepare and adopt a community safety and well-being plan. So the West Parry Sound municipalities have got together to work on this together, and we started in about May, and our lead really is Gord Harrison from Carling Township. He's the fire chief, and we have a planning group that is working through the steps that we have to go through in order to develop this plan. And this group is made up of municipal people, fire chiefs, and also the community services in our area that would also be part of this plan, as well as the OPP. Let me see if there's anything else. We've had at least 3 meetings, and we've also got a survey that will go out to communities. And so we'll have them in paper copies for people who do not have access to internet, and it'll also be a survey monkey as well. So we'll be collecting information from our communities, all our municipalities, through July and August. June, the rest of June and July, and then in August we're going to start putting that data together along with the other information that we have from our community partners on what their statistics show, and then we'll be starting to work on the plan in September, pulling it together. I'm not sure if that was enough or if you want more.
And what can I ask, Janice? What is the new deadline for these to be in place?
Well, the deadline right at the moment is July 1st, but we've already, Gord and some of the other fire chiefs have already met with the OPP and representatives from the Solicitor General's office, and have realized that we're sort of late getting into doing this, so we're not going to be able to make the July 1st deadline. But we do have a plan laid out to be able to bring this to councils and in November for approval.
Oh, okay, I understood that the province had extended the deadline.
They did. They extended
yeah.
it from January to July.
But they didn't extend it again, a second time?
Well, they may, but I haven't heard.
Oh.
Heard yet. Maybe we have a meeting tomorrow, actually, so maybe we'll hear then whether we have a further extension. But we realized that we could not have a meaningful document by July 1st, and it was not really to anyone's benefit to try and rush through this. So we thought we would take a more considered approach to looking at what we needed to get together and who we needed, and being able to make sure that we have something at the end that will be usable.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council? Does anybody have a comment they want to raise or a question? Okay, well, thank you, Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief for that update, and we will expect to see the survey that you referred to and results of your hard work eventually. So can I call the question then? Can we consider this report received? Any objection? Okay, thank you. Hearing none. The next item, I'm going to make this very brief for two reasons. The first one is that we are actually working on a written report to council, but it's not quite done yet. And the second reason, of course, is we're getting, time is moving on. I see we're at 9:30. So just to let you know that a week ago Friday, our manager of Public Works, Dave Creaser, and I made the trek back to Bolger Landing to meet with representatives of the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and representatives of the Magnatawan Pioneer Association, which is a cottagers association for Bolger, Kashagaba, Muskokway, and Whites Lakes. And the subject of the meeting was primarily focused on the parking situation at the landing, which has started to resemble some, it's on a much smaller scale, but encountered the same kind of problems that we have been encountering at the landings on Wawashkesh. And so we think that there are some solutions to that we can assist them in coming up with to that, and so we will have a report for you, but I think that's all. The other thing that we did do is that we did take due note of was the deplorable condition of the trail from the end of the Clear Lake Road all the way through to the landing. It's quite an experience sometime when you have several hours and a vehicle that you're not concerned about destroying. Take a trip back there and have a look at it, but not on a weekend, folks, because it's a very, very popular weekend camping area for some folks. Anyway, that's that is my oral update, and you'll get a written report before the next meeting. 11.5 is an item that I believe Councillor Gorham Matthews is going to speak to, but before she does, it's entitled Indigenous Reconciliation Efforts at the Municipal Level. Here's the suggested motion. Whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone acknowledges that ongoing reconciliation with our Indigenous communities is an important and necessary initiative, and whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone understands that this process will take time and require the support of all levels of government in collaboration with Indigenous peoples, and whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone is committed to being a partner in this effort, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone directs staff to work with Councillor Gorham Matthews in respect to considering initiatives that recognize the importance of the reconciliation with our Indigenous communities, and report back to Council no later than the August 3rd, 2021 Council meeting. Is there a mover and seconder for this?
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second
I'll
Councillor
second.
Woods.
All right, thank you, Councillor Woods. Okay, the floor is open. Would you like to introduce this, Councillor Gorham Matthews?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I'll keep this fairly brief because I know we're creeping up on 10 o'clock. So I mentioned this to our CAO a few weeks ago, kind of around the same time as when the recent residential schools burial was discovered in BC. And, you know, ironically, it's coming forward today on June 21st, which is National Indigenous Peoples Day. So that just kind of worked out that way. So part of my thinking was that we have these recommendations that were made to the federal government, and there were 94 of them made several years ago, and they're slowly working their way through them. It just seemed to me that there were things that we could be doing at a municipal level, and I've seen other municipalities doing it as well, that can support that effort. And, you know, part of reconciliation is, you know, talking about it and, you know, acknowledging that not everyone has the same past, you know, views as the past of our country and such. So one of the things that I've seen different municipalities doing is making a statement of reconciliation at the beginning of meetings. You know, we'd have a statement that we can say where we recognize the land that we're meeting on is ancestral territory, you know, of the Indigenous community that represents this area. Another, you know, quite easy idea I had as well is when I was searching through our website, there's no link to the Friendship Center. So I was thinking we should, in our community pages, include some information from the Friendship Center with regards to the natural history of this area. Another kind of easy thing to do would be cultural competency training. It's something that I've undertaken before through the College of Dutch Jurists. I'm the chair of the registration committee, and it's about having fair and transparent proceedings with people with foreign backgrounds and training, you know, so that you're fair and transparent with everyone. So I think that it's an easy step to have that type of training for our staff as well. So with the support of council, if you're in favor of this, I'd like to work with the Friendship Center and our staff to just bringing forward some of the reconciliation recommendations that the federal government's been working on, but at a more grassroots municipal level, just so that we're all on the same page with this issue.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Questions or comments? Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I support this wholeheartedly. I had time today to listen in on a couple of different discussions with elders, and they were mostly quite elderly people. One lady was I believe, York University professor, and she does Indigenous training And what she tries to enforce and get people thinking about is their actual roots, whether you're Indigenous or not. She had quite a blend in her classes, of course. And it was interesting that they started out like, why would I want to do this? What would the benefit be? And so much of it went back to understanding a bit more about their roots when they had to do a paper on it. And a lot of things that came out were around families and the issues with families when warring factions were happening. And you're going back into the 1700s or whenever in Europe or different places the people come from. It could be English, Irish, Polish, wherever they come from. And when they go back into their past and they start talking to people and getting informations, they find that a lot of issues evolve around the wellness and welfare of children and families who are left behind when the husbands and men folks went into war or when battles happened in their communities. And a lot of it wasn't unlike like the things that happened in Canada alone. And we're a pretty new community in Canada compared to going back hundreds of years. But it was very interesting. So, I support Councillor Gorham Matthews and talking to these people, getting some more local situational information if she can to present to us and provide for the public. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Councillor Lamb? No.
I'm muted.
No, you're not. Go ahead.
Right. No, I don't have anything to say.
Oh, sorry. I guess you just your microphone picked up a little bit of static or something, but anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I thought you were wanting to speak.
No, sorry. I wasn't.
If there's no other comments, can I call the question and ask if you're agreeable to have staff and Councillor Gorham Matthews work on this and bring us a report? Anybody opposed? Okay, hearing nothing, I will declare the motion carried. And that brings us to correspondence, of which there are quite a few items. And I think there are a few that we might want to pull for discussion. So could I ask you to call out numbers that you would like to talk about?
I don't have any.
Okay, does anybody
I
have?
didn't have any either.
All right. Well, maybe there aren't any. If there's not, I'm not going to push the matter. If there aren't any you want to discuss, maybe we can just have this motion. Whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items listed on page 4 of the Monday, June 21st, 2021 Council agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that Council receive the correspondence items for information with the following extracted for further discussion. So far I'm hearing none. Can I get a mover and seconder?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by.
I'll second Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Anybody going, one last opportunity. Does anybody want any of these to be pulled? All right, I'm going to record none. And I'm going to ask for your concurrence with the motion. If no one is objects, it's carried. So matters arising from correspondence, there are none. Councillor items.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods, I have a couple.
Go ahead, please.
I had a couple of phone calls on the weekend about the grass not being cut at the cemeteries. I had a call from someone that was talking about the cemetery in behind Ainsley Lake. And then oddly enough, the next day I had a call about someone talking about the cemetery in Maple Island, that the grass hasn't been cut. It was extremely long. I was just wondering what was going on with the cemeteries. I thought they were normally cut on a regular basis.
Could someone, our CAO or someone else answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But I'll let, looks like Councilor Gore Matthews would like to speak first, and then I'll jump in if needed.
Oh, okay.
So I reached out to Mr. Whitmore, who's our chair of the cemetery board, and he said that the Fairholme and Maple Island Cemetery ended up being cut on Sunday, and Whitestone was going to be cut tonight. I'm not sure what the rationale was of how they got far behind on those, but it is contracted out to a third party to cut them. Probably we may want to remind them to have them done before Father's Day or Mother's Day, or days that people are more likely to visit the cemeteries in the future. But they have been all cut now, according to the chair of the committee.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
A couple more quick ones, if I may.
Sure,
Mr.
go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but our signs, like the sandwich board looking signs, the one that we have at the community center and the one that we have on Bunny Trail, did we not normally post the dates of the council meetings when they were coming up on those signs? Because I haven't seen that happening. And to me, people driving by, they catch the information that there's a council meeting on this date. It was always a good thing. People would then pay attention and go get copies of the agendas and get more involved in the council meetings. Is there a reason that we haven't been doing that?
Madam CAO?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't suppose there's a particular reason. Once COVID started, there was other messaging that was put on the boards, as you've noticed, some positive messaging at times. No reason we couldn't go back to letting folks know that council meetings are coming up. We're doing that on Facebook and other locations as well, but it doesn't hurt to put it back on the sign of, along with other messaging if there's room.
Okay.
Okay.
And another one. So since the last council meeting, I've had 4 chances to go down to our beach in front of the municipal office there, taking my kids swimming. The new sign that the staff put up, I think it looks good. It's really informative and stands out quite a bit. The new dock looks fantastic, by the way, for everyone to dock their boats. I personally think it would be nice if we had another one of those docks one day, not necessarily right now, but it would be great. But what I did notice about the beach and the beach area, around the children's play area especially, it's filthy. There was garbage all over the place. On the 4 separate occasions, I mean, there's bottles floating around. There's garbage on the beach. There was, used paper towel all over the place. A couple pieces of 2x4 that it looks like somebody ripped pieces off of the hoarding wall by the change rooms there, was down on the shoreline of the beach. And I can't help but think that garbage wouldn't be on the ground if we had the recycling and trash receptacles at the beach again. And also, my little guy was playing on the climbers, and my other little guy was in the lake in the swimming area with his life jacket on. And I'm standing in the middle of the chain link fence we have there, kind of playing, lifeguard referee kind of thing, making sure they're both okay at the same time. And my youngest son went over and he's playing with the little trees, and we have the the T-bar post hanging up. And I understand the reason for it. You have a young tree, you keep the T-bar post and wrap it with the wire, which is fine. I don't have a problem there. But he was going over playing it and he says, ow. So I walked over to see what he was saying ow about. And a couple of them, the wires were taken down because the tree's obviously strong enough. The post is still in the ground, which I don't have a problem with that. But there was wires still hanging there, and those wires are sharp. Now, you know, he didn't injure himself, but he just poked himself a little bit. So I went back to my truck and I cut those wires off and threw them in the back of my truck. But then I noticed that the section of fence that we took down to allow for the walkway down to the new docks, which I like the walkway, I think it's great. The top rails and the upright rails and the rest of the materials for the fence are lying down in the grass near the children's play area. That can't happen. You can't leave construction materials, not even for an hour, lying around in a children's play area or on the public beach. And I don't know how that was missed, but that is something that we most definitely cannot miss. That needs to be moved. I mean, I don't care if you're only saying, oh, it's going to stay there for a day. It can't stay there for 15 minutes unless it's cordoned off with, you know, temporary construction fence so that people can't get into that part. There's the possibility that a kid's going to hurt themselves just trying to pick up one of those posts. And I would like to see that stuff moved and a little bit more attention taken to the children's play area and the beach area. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure our staff will have noted that.
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Councillor Lamb, I have several items. Just following up on what Councillor Wiz just said. I've been over several times and the new docks are being used, which is great. Again, what I would like to see, and it's a suggestion that I think the CAO is in agreement with, because I spoke to her on it. The main dock area, I would like to see that as a loading and an unloading area for boats. And if they're at the dock, the fire dock, the wooden dock, then that'd be at least like 5-minute parking, if anything, right? But you can't have people, you know, take a big boat and put it at as you're out on the lake on the left side of that dock, because it blocks people trying to get in and out, and it's just unfunctional. So we need to do something with that, with the dock. Now that we have the new dock. The new dock has room for at least 4 boats, and I think that's wonderful. So that's just a comment. I don't know whether it can be done. I think it can be done. I think it should be done, but maybe staff wants to come back with a report or something on that. So that's my number 1 item. And it's just a comment that I think should be done. And the number 2 item is, unfortunately, I had a medical situation and I couldn't attend the last meeting, and I apologize for that and sent my regrets. But I did hear from several people shortly thereafter about the landfill site and the 1,000 meters that you can't let guns off and things like that. I heard from several people on that, and I, you know, have looked into it a little bit. I don't want to get into a big debate. I just want to state that my position on this is that we should follow whatever provincial regulations are with respect to landfill sites and guns, right? I understand that it's regulated provincially, and I think that's what we should follow, and not some arbitrary 1,000-meter amount. So again, there may be others on council that disagree with that, but that's my personal opinion. So you can take that as if I was at that meeting last week, and I don't know where that takes people in terms of direction. So the third thing I have is there was a lady who sent all of council a memo or an email on Friday with respect to a rental at the community hall on, I think it's July the 24th, where there's a wedding. And at one point I had suggested that be put on the agenda for discussion tonight. I forgot to mention it at the first meeting to put on the agenda, but it's still an outstanding item. And, you know, the lady was, of course, saying, you know, I got a lot of people making hotel arrangements, that sort of thing. And they hadn't heard from staff. And anyway, I don't want to go through the whole email, but that needs to be resolved. And I guess my general opinion on it is if there's a wedding booked there, and if we go into stage 3, and if we can open it, and if they can comply with whatever comes out in stage 3, then they should be allowed to have that wedding. But if they can't, then we should tell them now, no. But again, if they can't do it through provincial regulation, then they shouldn't do it. But I think that needs to be resolved and discussed here tonight. And maybe when I'm done, we might want to take 2 or 3 minutes to discuss that, because just to leave it up in the air after sending an email to council, I don't think is the right thing to do. I only have 2 more things. The agendas, again, in the past, the agendas were made available at the landfill sites, at the Duck Rock, or excuse me, in front of the liquor store, and I don't know where else in the community. I think has that dropped off the bailiwick over the last few months? And if so, when is that going to start up again? Because a lot of people would pick up the physical copy of an agenda from one of those places. I know now we have internet, not internet, but you know, it's available online and that sort of thing. But so again, someone may want to make a comment on the agendas. My last comment that I'd like to make, and again, I'd like staff to maybe come back to me on this. I asked Councillor Woods to bring up at the last meeting parking of staff in front of the in front of the office in July and August. July and August, our population explodes, as everyone knows. We've got a wonderful beach, we've got a wonderful park, we've got a wonderful playground, we've now got docks, we've got all kinds of things. And I had requested, and I don't think it's unreasonable, that staff who are going to be in the office all day not park in front of the Dundome and take up valuable parking spots, but park up at the community hall and simply walk down the hill. And I also said, if someone's coming into the office at 8:30 and, you know, having to leave at 9 o'clock or 9:15, then fine, park there in the interim. But, you know, we've got an extra car that's sometimes not used, a municipal car that sits down there in one of those spots. And I just think that it's not unreasonable for people to park, for staff to park up on top of the hill for July and August, so that people using the beach area can use it. And I don't see any other municipality where you're guaranteed a parking spot 20 yards or 10 yards from the front door. So those are my 5 items. So I'll leave it for comment or whatever people want to say on them. Thank you.
Okay, before we leave those items, there was a fairly simple question regarding printed agendas. I thought they were still being provided. Can we get an answer to that, Madam
Yes,
CAO?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Conroy. Yes, so they're still being provided. I don't have the numbers, but there's a list of locations, and there's a number of agendas that are typically taken to those locations based on past experience and agendas left. I know for sure we take them to Olds Road. There's a box by the liquor store. I saw someone grab one the other day on my way out.
Oh,
and
excellent.
There's a couple of other locations. So that's still being done. And if for some reason it's a popular agenda and there isn't any left in the box, then we always print more. And that hasn't happened recently, but yes, that process continues.
I apologize for that. I had a call from someone today who told me they weren't available, and I said, well, I didn't know that, so that's why I asked the question. So good for you. Thank you.
It's possible we were just out of them.
Yeah, okay.
And if I may, in terms of the parking of staff, yes, I talked to staff, and staff, other than a rainy day or you know, occasional short-term staff parking, staff are taking turns parking at the liquor store, at the community center, or if it's a day, there's a couple of days there where staff were actually parking very close to the gate, away from the Dundome, and keeping an eye on the use of the park and moving vehicles if excessive traffic came and went. So staff are happy to do that. That's been done in the past with regard to swimming lessons. So that's not anything new for staff. And so they're very aware of making room for beach goers. The municipal vehicle is to be parked around on the other side of the fire hall. And so that's also been taken care of.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With respect to the wedding rental, there has been communication very recently between staff and the renters, the would-be renters, and essentially the dilemma really is this: it's all a matter of timing, and we could, as a municipality, we could say, well, we will open the Dundome, we will open the community center to you, providing the following conditions exist, and the conditions all relate to the provincial regulations that would be in force at the time. And as I already mentioned, there is some uncertainty around the question of what they will be permitted to do in phase 3 in terms of assembly, and we're talking about indoor assembly, right? So it's what will the percentage of your capacity be at that point, etc. And it's affected by whether liquor is served, and it is affected by a bunch of things. So essentially what these folks have been told is there's no guarantee, and I think they seem to be under the impression that somehow or other, if we say, well, you can do this, if we are in phase 3 and it's allowed you to do that they can just go ahead and make these arrangements. And I guess my concern would be that if the conditions that are necessary are not don't unfold for reasons beyond our control, we would end up very close to the wedding saying to them, oh, sorry, you can't do it, and they don't have a plan B. So it's possible that this might be able to go ahead, but I believe personally, and I have great sympathy for the situation they're in, and would love to help them out, but clearly I don't think we as a council can say, well, notwithstanding what happens provincially, we'll just let you use our facility, because we could get ourselves in a mess.
And Mr. Mayor, I wasn't suggesting that for a moment. The answer you gave me is the exact right answer. I just didn't get, the email we received said we haven't, we don't know any of this stuff. So if that's been communicated to them, then great. That you're right. That's the right answer. We can't go beyond what the province tells us, right? So thank you for your answer.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillor items? All right. Well, what I'm going to do at this point, thank you for that. Before we go to questions from the public, because we will have a closed session, I'm going to, I'm going to do the curfew just so that because we have a couple more minutes and we're just past 10 o'clock. So can I get a motion, please, that council continue its council meeting past the allotted time of 3.5 hours and continue for an additional 1/2 hour? And hopefully
I'll make that motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. I'm assuming there's no objection to that. All right, so now we do have an opportunity for questions from the public. I see there are a few folks still, thank you for your persistence. I see a few folks still on the line. If you do have questions, now's your chance. Doug Hickey has his hand up. Go ahead, please, Doug. Sorry, you're muted, Doug.
Okay, I assume you can hear me now.
We can.
Okay. I have two questions, one for you, Mr. Mayor, and one for our CAO. But before I ask the questions, first of all, Mr. Mayor, despite what you said at the Perry Sound Pool meeting, April 8th, and you said there was a negative movement from a small number of vocal ratepayers. Well, this is extremely incorrect. There's a large number of ratepayers across Carling, Whitestone, McKellar, and Seguin, who all have concerns about lack of transparency from our mayors, quite frankly. And we question the information that has come down to us. And let me just tell you, there are more fact checkers now than there are councillors and mayors across the region. So it's a big number. So my first question to you, Mr. Mayor, is on June 14th, Mayor McDermott of Seguin had said that the $170,000 had been exhausted. That was the money to look at the original feasibility study. They were out of money and they needed some cash from the municipalities to continue to look at it, put an RFP together for some kind of project manager. And so my question to you, Mr. Mayor, is will Whitestone be contributing funds to Perry Sound or to the Joint Municipal Services Board that we are not part of? Can you confirm that we will not be giving them funds towards any kind of cash flow problem?
Yes, I can. That was not part of our commitment.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, the second question is to our CAO. I have been in correspondence with Mayor McDermott directly. And one of the questions that she got asked by one of her councillors was about what their plan is to update their ratepayers, to give them updated information. For example, a question was asked, what would an annual membership cost at the YMCA? She said $300 a year for a family. She wrote back to me and said, oh, no, it's not 300, it's $925 for a single parent family. No, it's wrong. It's $1,500 roughly. So again, the question was from their counselor was, how do you plan, Seguin, on updating their ratepayers? And the answer Mayor McDermott gave was the following. The issue of surveys that the public will be handled by the CAO steering committee, the 7 CAOs, and will involve all communities in West Perry Sound. No timing is defined yet, and the contents are not finalized. So my question to you, Madam CAO, is, are you involved in the formation of a survey for West Perry Sound? Are you still involved in doing things like that when we've already said what we're doing and what we're not doing?
Yeah, I was just looking to unmute. Thank you. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hickey. I'll answer one of your last questions first. I still attend the steering committee meetings that the CAOs have. And that is, I need to be involved. I need to hear what's going on. There's been a good deal of talk lately about the Municipal Services Board. Of course, I don't participate in those discussions because Whitestone is not involved, and they know that. As far as the survey, I have not heard of a survey. Now, I did miss one meeting recently, and we have a meeting this coming Thursday. And it doesn't surprise me that they're looking at a survey, but I'm not involved at this point. I know that they're looking at other things at this point, one of them being a project manager, one of them being, the fundraising committee that's, important to many of the municipalities. So to your question, I stay connected with the steering committee because it's important that Whitestone understand and that Whitestone's requirements be met. That hasn't come up yet. It's very clear how Whitestone is to be involved and what the requirements are for that involvement. So I continue to advocate on behalf of Whitestone those requirements.
Okay, thank you. Good answer, by the way. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll ask one more time if any of the folks who are left on the call still have questions they want to ask. Well, if not, thank you then for your perseverance and for hanging into the end. Appreciate your interest. We are basically done with our agenda because we're going to now adjourn to a closed session for one brief item. So I will ask for a motion as follows. Be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned at, looks like 10:09 p.m. and that a closed meeting be convened subject to section 239 sub 2 of the Municipal Act for the following matters: a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contract or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization pursuant to the, sorry. No, I don't need to, the rest of it. So that's the motion. Can I get a mover and seconder?
I'll move, Councilor McEwen.
Councilor McEwen, seconded by.
I'll
second Councilor Woods.
No, sorry, that's okay. Councilor Woods.
All right, assuming everyone is in agreement, that motion is carried, and I will now adjourn the open session. You have been, councilors, you've been given instructions on how to join the other one from our clerk, so please hang up this one and click on the other call. Thank you. Good night, everybody.